afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hello, everybody.
I'm Almantas.
Hi, I'm Deuscain, and today we're going to be chatting with y'all about Slay the Princess.
Yes. How are you doing today, Days?
I'm doing well. Little sleepy, a little tired, little gamed out, but
A little gamed out. Yes. So, yeah, you were telling me because we always like to do a little bit of warm up. So steal content from the fans by by having discussion before we actually get started.
yes, but yeah, I had Metaphor Refantasio had its hooks in me all morning and a good bit of the afternoon. So yeah, I pride myself away from that for a collab.
I am grateful to have pried you away from your gaming addiction. I am. Of course, it's not like I am immune to my own forms of brain rot.
No, fair.
The number of times I've played quite a bit of Marvel Rivals, and I've actually spent quite a bit of my time the last week or so going, why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing here?
No, fair.
It's because I know I'm not going to actually be good at it, and there's this pull, right? There's this pull to try to be good at competitive games, at competitive shooters, and it feels like there's a higher valence to it when you're a streamer. There's this like, oh, like I need to, like owe people being like Diamond, being Grandmaster, etc., and that's not going to happen. And I don't think my audience would even really like to watch me play like 20 hours of Marvel Rivals a week. That doesn't actually sound like something that people are really that into.
That's not how I've seen you build your brand so far. No,
it's not. I enjoy the game, but it's I should probably try to stick to it being a thing I just do like off stream.
Or community days.
Fun to play with
Yeah.
Community days. I do community nights of it, and I play it with some of my streamer buddies. My VTuber sister Aziza is playing it constantly and has open lobbies on her streams. But it is yeah, we all have our own kind of forms of brain rot about this, and interestingly, that actually does kind of lead us in a very circuitous way back to the princess, which is you've been playing Metaphor, and I know enough about myself and my mentalities that I'm not going to play Metaphor.
Fair, valid.
I've heard very good things about it, and then I look at how the game is played, and nothing about it. Everything about it makes me just like want to play something else, or read a book, or get some exercise. It's like I just want to do almost anything else with my time. So if one of I will probably switch to somebody's Let's Play of it, and enjoy it in that fashion rather than on my own stream. But it is, for me, it's the mechanics, right? It's the mechanics of it that is like the absolute killer. And it is interesting to see how much that matters.
Yeah, very true.
I shouldn't even say it's interesting. It's interesting that anybody would think it doesn't matter incredibly strongly.
Yeah, full agree. Yeah.
I don't see why you would not play games that you love the mechanics for. I played some of this Magnum earlier this week on stream because it's a game where I just simply love the mechanics. It's just nothing else. There's no other explanation for what I know about the game other than that I feel incredible playing it. It feels wonderful to play, and I have 3,000 coming hours of work for the same reason, right? I enjoy I just enjoy playing Warframe. I have a friend who I used to play Warframe with on one team, kind of like got to the team wanted to the game, he got bored of it. And wow, that never mattered to me. That did not matter to me at all. What mattered was how any given 5 minutes of the game felt.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely different things that appeal to different people about games. Sometimes it's the visuals, sometimes it's the narrative, sometimes it's the mechanics, sometimes it's how the whole thing melanges together, and yeah. So
I think it's going to be critically engaged with all those things as well. There's definitely there's a way in which like I'm a bit of a believer like there is better answers.
oh yeah, of course.
It's not actually just
You can still like a piece of medium while also having valid criticisms about it.
yeah.
And you can praise a piece of medium while also going, yeah, no, but it has flaws.
Absolutely. And front on this case, like the princess, our actual discussion point, we are talking around.
Yep.
We're going to be circling this.
Another minute or two, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was my favorite game of the year.
yeah,
It was my favorite game I played this year. I played a lot of excellent games here. I had a really good gaming year.
nice.
I actually enjoy streaming horror games more than I enjoy playing them on my own. And so I played Signalis, then the first two Silent Hills, then Mouthwashing, then Outer Wilds, and Slay the Princess. And I think that was the order of gameplay, like story-based gameplay I played on stream. And so for this to be the number one game I played in the year, we are talking about some steep competition this year. It was a steep competition this year for the top games, and Slay the Princess is so special, truly special.
Yeah, I played it.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, I equally played a lot of very good games. I don't know if Slay with the Princess is absolutely number one for me, but it's definitely like top 10, maybe even top 5, like without questioning. It is a game that I managed to somehow go into almost entirely blind, did not know much of anything, and had a blast. Had such a good time playing it the first time I recommended it to friends, and I went back and replayed it several other times. Like it's you finish it and you go again, give me again. So
beautiful game.
Yeah. But I was gonna say for the audience, for those who might not have seen our streams playing this, what is Slay the Princess? Obviously, it's a visual novel. It's a horror game. We've said both. The trailer does a very good point, and obviously the beginning of the game does a very good point of it drops you in the middle of the woods, and you're on a path in the woods, and the end of that path is a cabin. In the basement of that cabin is a princess. You're there to slay her, and if you don't, it's going to be the end of the world. And that's all you know going in. And don't, if you're planning on playing this, don't tell yourself anything more. Don't look things up. Yes, we do this with love. Go play the game. Leave now and play the game. Pause this and come back.
Pause this, come back. It's an experience. It's a beautiful experience.
Agreed.
Yes, exactly. This is absolutely a game you want to play with as much of an open mind as you can have.
In addition to an open mind, I also recommend a strong stomach. This is a horror game. There is body horror, and it gets bloody real fast. It gets messy real fast.
This was the game.
I think literally the first scene you have in the game when you turn it on is them with a content warning. They don't even tell you what the content warnings are. They're like, go to this website to find out what they are. And when it's so much they have to direct you to a website, some shit goes down.
It's extensive. It is well curated. When I was streaming it, I pinned the link to the content warnings the entire time because I didn't want anybody to be unable to handle what was happening. It it was kind of interesting because I've talked with my community about it quite a bit, and one of those things I thought was kind of interesting. I put out a viewer survey, and I asked like, what type of games do you like? I found down like thoughtful games as one thing, and Slay the Princess is an example of it. And Vex hated this. Vex fucking hated this. Our mutual friend Vex had.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah, because she didn't. She did not think of it as a. She couldn't watch it at all.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like. I genuinely cannot think of a game that I was more intellectually engaged during. Certainly not while I was streaming. I've certainly not played a game on stream that was like more, where I was more like intellectually engaged, and more like thoughtful, and more like going deep and hard on what the game is about and what I'm thinking about, and the artfulness of the game.
Yeah, and it's also a real nail biter the first time you're going through it, when like you don't understand how this works. They don't tell you the mechanics. You're in there and you're dealing with the situations that you have to deal with, and whatever fallout and consequences from the choices you make, and you have no idea what's going to happen and what you're going to be facing going forward. So it really throws you in the deep end hard and fast, and if you're not ready for it, yeah, it's gonna drive you out, and I know for a fact Vex is not like horror games, and this is absolutely what has driven her away. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was kind of interesting to me because I didn't really parse it as a horror game. It is like it undoubtedly is, but I think it was first and foremost a really thoughtful game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a very thoughtful game. I thought it was a game that was very much about trust.
Yes.
I thought it was a game that was about acting, and I thought it was a game that was about love.
Very much so. Yes.
Those all kind of. All right. Sorry. Mara, have a good night. Have a good night. It's good to have you here, but yes, it is.
Catch that Eepster. Give him hell for us.
Yeah. But it was definitely not like my first thought to think of it like primarily as being about horror, in no small part because there's some gore in it.
It is and it isn't. It's a weird game where like visually, like the almost the entirety of the game is in black and white, so it really has a stark, aggressive horror stylization of it. But we talked about like the first thing you see when you load into the game is this warning about content and bad things you're going to see in this game, and just the damage that's getting ready to come. And what's interesting is the second scene that plays right after that, which I actually grabbed a screenshot of it and I'm looking at it right now. And it says, "Whatever horrors you may find in these dark spaces, have heart and see them through. There are no premature endings. There are no wrong decisions. There are only fresh perspectives and new beginnings. This is a love story."
Yes.
And seeing that immediately after the content warning is one of those like, okay, oh, there's something here. Like this is two extremes put together, and how well did they blend this? And they blended it extremely well.
I thought that Tony Howard, Arias Howard, I believe, Tony Arias Howard, did an incredible, or was it Howard Arias? Did an incredible job.
Not sure.
As a writer. Well, because I know because it was a husband-wife team.
Yeah, and I'm actually aware of Abby Howard because I read her comic The Last Halloween, which I didn't.
I knew her for Junior Science Power Hour. That's how I came to this. This makes this the second game that I have played based off of. It was written by a webcomic artist I liked.
Nice.
And the other one is Perfect Tide, and they're like the two best written games I've ever played. So that's pretty funny to me. So Tony Howard is her husband. He was the lead writer for Slay the Princess, and Abby Howard herself is a horror nerd. She's a big horror nerd.
Oh yeah.
a lot of her work is horror, and I was not familiar with Tony's game before. I was familiar with Tony as a minor character in Abby Howard's comics when they dip into real life themes, and so I was not familiar with his work before. But I'm very impressed. I am very, very impressed. And so yes, the core of the game, the fundamental way the game works. We are going to be spoiling stuff very, very hard and very fast.
Yeah.
I told you kind of all the stuff that could not. There's not a lot of room left to go into before you get into like major spoilers.
Yeah,
the game does not. The game is unrelenting.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about the game without actually like talking about the game and clearing things. Because like I will say, my first playthrough of this game, I did an entire run in about 4.5 hours, start to finish.
Yeah.
So like there isn't a whole lot of game. I think I saw one thing online on social media from the developers that said it's not a very deep game, but it's very wide. And I think that's one of the best descriptions I had of it. So yeah, it's impossible for us to talk about the game without addressing the breadth of topics, which automatically is going to spoil a lot of things because there just isn't much depth to it. There is only so much you can do. You repeat a lot of content over and over again through multiple playthroughs, so it's impossible to not talk about spoilers.
I mean, I would disagree about the question of depth. That might be a vocabulary question. That might be
I'm just quoting them. I think it has more to do with the sheer options you have.
Yeah, the sheer one.
So let's talk mechanics. Let's talk mechanics.
Let's talk mechanics. The game starts off with a narrator who tells you what Deuscain said. You are in a path in the woods. At the end of that path is a cabin. In the basement of that cabin is a princess. You must slay the princess or the world will end. That's how the game starts.
And you're joined by another voice in your head that is the voice of the hero, who is with you constantly through the entire story.
Yes. And so you start off this way, and you go, and it plays out from there fundamentally like a visual novel.
Yeah.
It is fundamentally a series of visual novel style choices. The narrator says something, and then you get a list of dialogue options for how you can respond to it. So your options, with the first, where you're in the path in the woods and you can't even see the cabin. I put a picture of the cabin up on my side.
I think most of the ones in the woods are just like examined, so it's like you asking yourself questions, wondering like, why am I here? Why am I supposed to kill her? What did she do? Why is she ending the world? Like, isn't this bad?
You can absolutely argue with him. You very much have the option to argue with him, with the narrator. So those are your first options. You can argue with the narrator. You can say that sounds like a great idea. You can just walk to the cabin and not say anything, or you can just turn around and
leave.
That's funny. That was funny.
Yeah.
There's a funny special ending for that one.
Yeah.
Not even the dumbest ending. Not even the dumbest ending.
Oh, the good ending is the dumbest ending. Yes.
That's the dumbest ending by far.
Yeah.
That's definitely the dumbest ending. And then you walk up to the cabin. And I'm gonna scroll forward because we have images of the inside of the cabin. And you get your first real choice in the game. Your first real choice is that in the cabin, I don't have a picture that particularly has it, there is a knife.
There's a pristine blade, it's explicitly called.
Pristine blade. He's so fixated on the pristineness of that blade.
Yes.
It's never a rusty blade, it's never a well-used blade, it's never a workman-like blade, it's always pristine.
Yep, and it's always the same knife too. Like it's never through all the permutations you see of the game, that knife is always the same, which is interesting.
Yes. Yeah, that is actually pretty interesting. That is actually pretty interesting given how
given everything else that changes.
Yeah, given all of the millions of ways that things change. And you go down into the basement with or without your blade, and the princess is there. And you can talk with her.
Yep.
You can immediately try to kill her. You got some options. And the story proceeds from there.
Yep.
with the narrator taking varying levels of control over the situation.
Yeah, because he is all in on killing her, and
he is super all in.
If you won't do it, he will force you to do it, or will try.
Yes. So may as well talk about my first experience.
Sure.
Which I think was pretty typical.
Let's see what typical is, because I know from bits and pieces I've seen of your streams, when you were playing, you went down some routes that I did not, and I went down some routes that you did not. So yeah,
that's fair. So my instant reaction on hearing the narrator was, I don't trust this guy. I did not trust the narrator from the jump, and I can talk about my logic there. I talked about it a lot on stream, but I don't mind revisiting it. So I went down into the basement without the blade, and did everything in my power to not kill the princess. And the narrator eventually seizes control of your body and stabs the princess, which I did as much as I could to prevent it from happening. And I successfully did not kill the princess, and the princess very apologetically, politely, and incompetently stabbed me to death.
Stabs you in the chest multiple times while crying and apologizing. Yep.
While crying and apologizing. And then you die. You die. Which gets us into the actual structure of the game. This gets us to the real structure of the game. You are on a path in the woods. At the end of that path is a cabin. In the basement of that cabin is a princess. You must slay the princess or the whole world will end. You start over. You start over, but when this happens, I get to the cabin, and in the basement of that cabin, the princess is there, but she's different.
Well, even the cabin itself is different, and
that's true.
One thing I should mention that'll be a little bit relevant for one of my topics later is you get title cards, and
that's true.
Chapter 1 is the Knight and the Princess, I believe is what it's called, and with what you're describing,
the hero and the princess.
The hero and the princess. Thank you. And then you are going into Chapter 2, the damsel.
The damsel, yes. It was the damsel in the basement, and two things. The cabin is different, but also the voices in your head are different.
You have an extra one.
You still have the hero, but another one has joined you.
The Smitten.
In the case of the damsel, it's the Smitten. It's Smitty. It's everyone's favorite.
Smitty is great. I love Smitty.
Smitty's amazing. Everybody loves Smitty. Smitty is incredible. And I have a lot of thoughts about I probably have more thoughts about the damsel than about any of the other princesses, and we'll probably get to that later as we get along. But you get to the basement, and there's the princess, and she's different. As far as princesses go, the damsel is a relatively subtle change.
She strikes me as the most like Disney anime princess of all of them.
Very much the most Disney princess. It made me think a lot about Don Quixote. The way that Smitty talks reminded me a lot of Don Quixote.
Oh yeah, I can see that being an inspiration for it.
Yeah, and again, I was on my shit about doing everything in my power to annoy the narrator. I was treating this like it was the Stanley Parable, and your goal is to be a problem for the narrator. So I was treating this like I was trying to be a problem for the narrator, and the Smitty just says, "How can those shackles hold our lady's arms? They're so dainty and slight. She could slip right out." And the narrator's like, "What are you talking about?" And then she just takes off the manacle like it's nothing. And he's like, "Are you fucking kidding me?"
Which we should be clear about one thing too. In Chapter 1, you're trying to get her out of there, and you're like, "Well, I don't have a key." And she's like, "Maybe check upstairs." And you're like, "Well, what if I don't?" And she's like, and she looks at the arm, and she looks at you, and if you bring the knife with her, she looks at the knife, and you put two and two together, she's gonna cut herself out, and she will to get out. So you get to this Chapter 2 for the damsel, and yeah, the narrator's like, "Well, you're gonna have to cut her out again, and blah blah blah," and yeah, you're absolutely right. The Smitten is just like, "No, that's ridiculous. The power of love will free her," and he just walks over and slides it off her wrist, and the narrator mauls so hard over that because he's like, "What the fuck?"
It's so good. It's so good.
Sorry to
I
cut
love
in there, but I did
I
love
love
I
ruining
love
his
that
day.
moment too. Yeah, that was great.
I love ruining his day.
Hmm.
And let me see if I can go find some of these.
If you're looking for
Uh,
images, I have the wiki up in one tab
I've been
somewhere.
using I've been using the folders, but I'm doing it the wrong way. I'm doing it the bad wrong way, which is I'm doing it as a slideshow. I should just be doing it as a window capture. That would be much more reasonable.
Probably. I will send you a link to the damsel.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so, yeah, the damsel, I adored the damsel, and that was my introduction, was via the damsel. And I think the game's relationship to the damsel route is actually really complicated. I do not think it was nearly as intended to be as default as it's felt to me. And it does lead to the second stupidest ending in the entire game. If you follow the damsel route, there's an extraordinarily stupid sub route.
Oh, fun. But actually, I do agree with you that the damsel is a major route for the game, because when they released the DLC, the Pristine Cut edition, they actually expanded the damsel and gave her own chapter 3. It was a spin-off of that.
The damsel chapter 3, the damsel has two alternate route endings.
She sure does.
She sure freaking does. And the I adored the damsel, and that was kind of my introduction to this. And so you do this, and you walk outside with the damsel while the narrator is malding, and fuck that guy. So that was funny. And the world ends.
Then the hands show up.
Yeah, then the damsel gets eaten by eaten from the abyss by hands, and the whole world disappears, and you get to talk to what at that point is functionally God, as far as you are concerned.
Yep.
And this god of hands and faces and princesses.
Should we use the name for them now?
Yeah, we may as well.
They are the Shambling Mound, is what they're called.
Yes, the Shambling Mound. And the Shambling Mound is talks like a professor, to be blunt. As a former professor, she talks like a professor. She talks much more clear and much more concisely than quite a few professors I know. So I thought it was really funny that you have a bunch of options to yell at her for talking too vaguely and circuitously, and I'm like, compared to Judith Butler, this is straightforward.
I thought she made perfect sense for a lot of what she was saying, but I'm also like a 40-year-old adult who's liked a lot of like hard books in my life. So like I'm just like, yeah, no, this makes sense. I don't understand why we're upset.
I thought she was perfectly coherent.
Yeah.
I thought she was actually very lovely. I liked her. And she's like, oh, thank you for bringing me this vessel. Bring me more vessels.
The gift of a fragile vessel. Yes.
The gift of a fragile vessel, so that I may be complete. And I always love this. I always love these scenes. Every single... So this is the fundamental structure of the game at a very basic level, is Chapter 1, the hero and the princess. Chapter 2, question mark, question mark, question mark. Chapter 3, the shifting mound. Well, not really chapter 3, but like afterward.
Yeah.
The shifting mound. And you do this enough times that eventually the shifting mound goes from being a kind of inchoate mass of writhing hands into being a person.
Yep.
And this is an extremely powerful and complicated person, but a person. And it's... I think it's a very cool way of organizing a story. And this is the basics of it. That was my introduction, was the damsel. That was my first touch.
Yeah, you run through, you meet the damsel, you take her outside, the hands take her away, you're in that particular area you're in. It's called the Long Quiet, which is a fantastic name. The first time I like keyed into that, I'm like, oh, the Long Quiet, that's a great name. Like, we're just in this dark void that has like a texture, but I don't know why or what it is, but it's the Long Quiet, and you meet the Shambling Mound, and what she eventually does and is she knocks you out and sends you back and loops you. Is the mechanic of it. One thing you forgot to mention, or maybe you didn't see it, the mirror.
I did not mention the mirror. That's true.
It's funny. The reason why I said he might not have seen it is because in Chapter 2, there's always a mirror inside the cabin, and the narrator never comments on it. You get the impression you can't see it. It's in Chapter 3 as well, but that's kind of where I joked with that. And when you're done with Chapter 2, you always walk up to the mirror, you get close to it to touch it, and the voices in your head all go away. You wipe off the mirror and can see yourself, and then you go to the long quiet in the shambling mound. And the last thing you hear when she sends you back is the sound of the mirror breaking. Which is very strong bit of punctuation, I guess I would say it.
Yes. Yes.
So, again, sorry for cutting in, but
No, you're correct. You're correct. This is the right time for this part for us to branch out the discussion a little bit. So I started off and I got the damsel because I started off with we can talk more about why I felt this way, but I did not trust the narrator at all from the jump. I found the narrator to be a perhaps the exact opposite of trustworthy, and of all of the things, partially based off of my personal history and experiences, but also I think he's somewhat intentionally written this way. He struck me very hard, very fast, as somebody who does not have my best interest at heart.
Which is true. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, which is true. Or anybody's best interest at heart, which is not true, kinda.
He's doing it for a reason. He doesn't tell you the reason. He can't tell you the reason, and we'll get to why later.
Yeah.
But he I agree. He's codes very, very shady, very, very shifty, and does so very quickly at the moment you start like interacting with him.
Yes. And so I started my very first route was premised on doing whatever will make him the most unhappy. And again, this was also how I played the Stanley Parable. My first run through of the Stanley Parable, I don't think I left the starting room.
Nice.
For like half an hour or something like that, and I like quit the game. Like I when I'm dealing with these kind of narrators, I get very contrarian. And
funny you mentioned that person and that voice.
I like the contrarian a lot.
Yeah.
I like the contrarian. So what was your first route?
Well, do all of your runs, because there's actually my entire full run leads to a point, and I want to do my entire run as well, and it feels I don't want to kind of cut back and forth there. So who did you meet after the damsel then?
Let me think about this. Damsel, then princess, not princess, prisoner.
The prisoner.
Prisoner, who I liked a lot. I like the prisoner a lot.
And the voice in your head for that one, I believe, is the skeptic.
The skeptic, who I really liked. So I have a general hypothesis about the game to brief aside to talk about the theory of the game and such like that. The each princess variation comes with a matching voice inside your head, and they are paired. They are very deliberately paired. These are not accidental. These are people. To me, the voice and the princess always made coherent sense as a matching pair of people that I could see being romantically entangled. And in general, the extent to which I liked a route was kind of a scale of how much I thought they made how much I liked them as a couple.
Fair.
So
considering it's a love story, yeah.
Because it's a love story, and I'm not much of a horror guy, but I am much of a romance guy. I actually really like romances. I read a lot of romance manga. Much of it is not very good.
Some of it's very cringe. Same with romance movies. Some of them are just atrociously bad, but you know what?
Yeah.
You just want to eat that cake. Yeah.
I just love love. What can we say?
Yeah.
And the prisoner and the skeptic, which is the VA for the princess. All of the princesses are VA'd by the same person. The VA for the princess is a VTuber.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I believe Nicole Midnight.
Very cool.
And prisoner is her favorite. Prisoner is cool. Prisoner I really liked. And then, so I went damsel, prisoner, witch. Witch is very funny. Witch is paired with the opportunist.
Yes, that bastard.
The opportunist is quite annoying. The opportunist is pretty annoying.
I find him slightly charming, but you find him annoying. I actually found an account on Blue Sky. The entire account is focused on how much they love the opportunist.
I can see that.
Which is interesting.
When I say I don't find his annoyingness contradictory with him being charming. I feel like these are overlapping and interlinked conceits. I don't think it's contradictory. But I do find him annoying. He's
no fair.
He is kind of an obnoxious little shit. And so is the witch. The witch is not what I was expecting from the name.
No.
The witch is a furry.
Yeah, she's.
The witch is very much.
Yeah, she. Which we actually we described what the damsel looked like. We didn't talk about the prisoner.
The prisoner's cool.
So in chapter 1, the princess has a shackle on her one arm. And when you get to the prisoner, she has one on each arm, one around her neck, and there's an empty shackle hanging off the wall.
Yes.
Which you can interact with if you want to do things. But yeah, the witch is like think the old like furry Robin Hood film where it's like it's a animal person wearing clothes. She's got ears, she's got a tail, she's got claws. Her legs are very clearly inhuman, but she's humanoid. Yes.
I am trying to find a good picture of her, because the thing about the witch is really funny because she's doing permanent
Ooh face, huh?
Yeah, permanent this. She has a surprising range of expression for somebody who is doing that the entire time. No, that's okay. I'm going to have to look her up elsewhere.
I got an image for you here.
Perfect. This is the advantage of doing this as a collab, is that one person can be
one can talk and one can share.
Yes. And so, this is not what I was looking for. This is a good image. This is one of the achievement images.
Or is it this one, the second one here?
No. I want to find one of her in action. The witch, slay the princess,
or
I want to grab a still
like
from,
this one,
like actual. Yeah, that's more what I was looking for. That's more what I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, she's just doing this constantly.
She
just always looks like this.
This smug ass expression on her face. Yeah.
It's incessant. She isn't even. She is trying to betray. She will betray you if you trust her.
Oh yeah.
But she will not even pretend to like play the game with you at all. She is not even trying to deceive you well. She's the second worst of the princesses at deceiving you. And the so I got witch and then power. Who was the route that I wound up on the most frequently, which is a bit of a shame because I didn't actually like the tower very much.
Fair.
And then Beast, which I also didn't really get much out of.
Okay.
And I actually went Beast into Wild.
That makes sense.
Wild I like.
Wild is very good. Yeah.
Wild is very cool. But the Beast
You got 8.
So yeah, I did. And so you can probably tell somewhat from the looking at this princess that is you said the Robin Hood film. I was thinking more like, what was it, the Atlantis movie or whatever it was, Treasure Planet movie, I think.
Okay, that would make sense. But yeah, like standard, like kind of like furry thing, like the like
very much a
Judy Hop, like Bugs Bunny, kind of like this is somebody that is blending human and animal, but is still leaning towards the human. Whereas the Beast is the opposite. The Beast is is an animal with human intelligence that talks.
So, and one of the most striking moments to me, I'm going to go find a chat. I'm going to go. Bear with me. One of the most striking moments to me was when I got to the tower. When I got to the tower in my playthrough, I will.
While you look for those images, let me talk about the book.
I already grabbed it.
Oh, okay.
I already grabbed it. So I'm just going to send it to you. This. What? This was This was what happened to my chat when I got to the tower.
Oh god, they went all mommy, didn't they?
Yes. Extremely hard. Extremely hard.
She's my hear me out on the cake. My god.
I think it's the last line that's a really what's kind of missing is like the oof and LMAO are responding to me saying, I just noticed that she has yaoi hands. And so my chat went crazy for the tower, who I had a much less of a reaction. I'll say that I do not share these sentiments.
Fair. But while we're talking, before we get,
yeah, those were my first 5. That was my first run.
I was saying before we get into too much after your run in with the Witch in the Wild. So you had the damsel with the smitten, the prisoner with the skeptic.
Yes.
Then you had, we mentioned the witch and the opportunist. Then the tower pairs with a voice in your head called the broken.
Yes. And that's honestly a lot of why I found the tower to be one of the less compelling ones. Is I found the broken just annoying.
Yeah, he's something. I've had some interesting runs with him, but then the last one for what was your last one? What was
Beast?
The Beast.
Beast and Hunted.
Yeah, the Beast and the Hunted. Thank you.
Yeah, the Beast and the Hunted. And that was and again, the Wild is a very interesting part of the run. If you get the Wild, if you see the Wild, and that was my first run.
What did you? Well, then to talk about the ending, then to like the structure of it, when you get close to the end and you're talking to the Shambling Mound, you can ask her like, "How many more do I need?" And she'll sometimes give you vague answers, but eventually she'll get to the point where like one more. Bring me one more vessel, and the gravity of them will pull the rest to me. They'll snap them in. So if your last one was the Beast, then you would have gotten the ending where you get to have a nice long conversation, or maybe not so long conversation, with the narrator and find out some truths about what the fuck is going on. And then you get to go meet the woman you've been helping find herself. And what did you choose for the ending?
So when you get to the ending, you get to have a final conversation with the narrator as he dies, because he has failed. And I kind of that told me what his objective was, and because I was running very much on a I hate this guy and want him to lose in every way, shape, and form, I tried to be as conciliatory as possible.
Oh, you taunted him in death. Oh, that's brutal but valid.
And it was kind of interesting because the shifting, I had one thing, I was not willing to budge on one thing with the shifting mound, which was, this is a story about love. This is a story about people changing together. This is a story about the interaction between two people and the world they create together. Mm-hmm. And the shifting mound is pretty fucking imperious. And so I really needed her to just admit in some way that she was wrong.
I think that's even one of the lines you can say back to her. Is you have this back and forth, like, visual novel final boss fight in just text, and you get to the end of it and she's just like, I see nothing I've said has changed your mind, and you can literally shoot back at her like, Same for you. Like you're accusing me of not listening to you, but you're not listening to me.
That was exactly what I went with, and so this led me to eventually going into her heart and meeting, well, you know, the kind princess,
Mm-hmm.
the kind princess, and running away with her, and not accepting my destiny as a god.
Which to be clear, that's what the narrator did. His whole
Yeah.
shtick, the thing he was trying to do is, I'm a little confused as for what was happening, whether it's like the end of his world or civilization, or whether this is like heat death of the universe levels of like a lot of people are gonna die. It's kind of I kind of got heat death.
That was heat death. It was. I'm convinced it was heat death.
Yeah.
His issue with the shifting mound is that because this is one of those things that the shifting mound says, that the shifting mound is not death intrinsically. It includes death because the shifting mound is all concepts of change.
Yeah. So and the interpretation of what I got from what the narrator did was he took death as like a metaphysical concept and split it into two pieces. One is the shifting mound, which is the potential for change, because death is going to transition you from one type of life, one type of thing to another, and the other one is you, which is the long quiet, the middle ground that you're in every one of these interludes is you walking on your sleeping god body, which is where where you pull the pieces to her, and he made you as a god to kill death, because if you kill her and stop change from happening, you can save everybody. And that was his whole thing of what he was trying to do.
And I was reading it at an even somewhat more abstract level. You know, this is my horrible science education coming back to bite me in the ass. When I thought about like what the shifting mound is, to me that was just the entire abstract concept of entropy.
Fair.
He is trying to end the abstract concept of entropy, and if you end the abstract concept of entropy, what is there? What do you have if there's no change in entropy over time? The long quiet. Yes.
Which is static. It's not necessarily stagnant. I don't get that impression from what we would be, but it's a forever now that never changes.
It would functionally mean the ending of time moving in any particular direction. Which is one of the endings. That is a hell of an ending. And that was so I basically rejected his entire premise and conceit for how to change the universe, and went with changing the universe in a way that is much more parsable to me as a human being. Because once I realized that when he means everyone will die, he means that in a sort of like vague abstract sense of like the concept of time passing, and I lost a lot of sympathy for his motivation.
Yeah, fair.
Because we all are all going to die, and I think we just need to live with that.
Yeah, he's rejecting the absolute concept of death rather than just having to process the fact that like he is mortal and he's going to die. And in fact, he already has. The narrator is an echo. The true narrator is already dead. He took his own life to build the construct that this is all contained in.
Mm-hmm. So yes, my first run, I think, was not perfectly how I wanted everything to go down. Like I said, I have some complaints and some
fair
critiques. Like I said, like I posted that image of one of my chatters splooshing might be the word that people would use over the tower. over the tower. The reality of those were the kind of the moments where it felt so much like I was looking at the game is thinking about sex, is thinking about sexuality, and I think that is fair and good. But sometimes it felt like it was a little bit too focused on the fetish elements, and the interaction between the tower and the broken really felt very much like that to me.
Fair.
and particularly the beast and the hunted. It's like, oh, this is just Vor. Is
So
there anything else happening here?
There,
This is just Vor.
there is, and we can talk about then.
I did not really get much out of it other than that. But we've got an ad break coming.
Yeah, I've got an ad break in about 1 minute, so we're gonna take a quick BRB, and then we'll come back, and then I will talk about my run, my first run, and my experiences with that. Because I will be clear, I've done 4. I've done 4, and I wrote down all of the paths I did.
I have technically done 4. We can talk about my second run. My second and third runs I did in one day.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll see you all in a few minutes.
All right.
We are back. We are back.
Ad break over. We're free for another hour.
We are free. We are free.
So we explained the premise of the game and discussed Almantas's first run of the game. And I'm going to talk about my first experience now.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So, much like Almantas, I started off the game. I discussed everything I could with the narrator, trying to get more info on the world. Went up to the cabin, walked inside, and I didn't reject the narrator immediately like you did. I'm like, okay, this is my one guide here. I'm going to listen to him as long as I think he's still saying something useful. So I pick up the knife, I go downstairs. And I meet the princess, and she's a little bit scary, a little bit sinister. And I'm kind of trying to like suss her out, and she says something that catches my attention and catches it very quickly. I'm trying to find information on the princesses here, because there is a difference between the two princesses you meet at the beginning, essentially based on whether or not you take the blade. If you take,
there's a cold princess and a sweet princess.
That's what it is. It's cold and sweet. Yeah. So I met the cold princess first, but she wants to talk to me and tells me just put down the knife, talk to me. And I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. You know what? I'll set it down over here. I'm not giving it to her. I'll sit down and talk with her. And I chat with her, and I discussed several topics. But what stuck me at one point was she says something to the effect of like, I can tell you to trust me, but there's not much point. You don't know me. All we have is blind trust, and that's all we've got to work off of. And we're just going to have to make do with that. And that was the moment, the exact moment I'm like, you know, I'm on her side. I am on her side. I wasn't opposed to the narrator. I was pro princess from that point on.
An interesting distinction.
Yeah. So, I helped her try to leave. I tried to go upstairs and get the key. Door's locked. I can't do it. I come back to her, and I help her cut herself out of her bonds. And we go to leave, and the narrator takes over my body, tries to get me to stab her, which, to be clear, this is a terrifying moment of the game, because you have this wall of... Usually you get like several options. This is a wall of options, which all say, kill her.
Yes.
And then if you're paying close enough attention, you notice a little icon next to it that means you can scroll down, and down in the options, there's one choice that is not kill her, and you can warn her that you are attacking her but can't stop yourself. So I did that. She's very suspicious of me at that point. I get another wall of text telling me to kill her with one option to resist. And this is relevant because I resist, which basically like you freeze up. She walks up, takes the knife out of my hand, and coldly and calmly cuts my throat, which takes me to the prisoner. Same chapter that Almantas did. So I go into that chapter. Cabin's different. I see the mirror. I go downstairs. She's there. I chat with her again, and she's just like, and she's more suspicious this time. She's more skeptical, which is great because I have the skeptic in my head. Thank you for the follow. Is that I'll call you Justa. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, thank you for the follow, Justa Smut Reader.
Yeah. So she's very wary of me, but by that point, like I said, I'm all in for being on the princess's side. So when she tells me to give her the knife, I'm like, yeah, sure, here it is. And the narrator's like, what? No, don't give her the knife. And she's like, thank you. And then proceeds to cut her own head off in front of me. And you're just watching this woman do that until she does it enough that she like literally can't anymore, and her head just flops on the floor. And I'm looking at it like, the fuck am I supposed to do with this? You know what? I'll take her upstairs. At least she'll get to see the sky, as her last thing. I'll bury her somewhere nice with a good view. And I walk upstairs, I look out of the night sky, and the head in my arms, the eyes open up, and she talks to me. And I'm like, what the fuck?
See, I did that. I got that ending as well. Oh, hold on a second. I am being rated.
Hey, thank you, Raiders.
Entomolomoth. Hello, Entomolomoth. Let me give you the shout out. Entomolomoth, welcome in. Entomolomoth is an educational VTuber who is very obsessed with bugs,
nice.
As the name Entomolomoth both parts might hint at. Thank you for the raid. You're playing Empires of Undergrowth. It's good to see you. Me and Deuscain are discussing Slay the Princess.
And we are deep into spoiler talk, yes.
You're deep into spoiler talk. Unless you have played the game or you have an aversion to playing the game specifically, which is very fair. It is a maximum content warning game. You should probably bail. If you have any intention of playing the game, and I highly recommend you do. It was my #1 game of the year. Please, please do not spoil yourself on it because it is phenomenal.
But otherwise, yes, if you want to hang out and you want to chat and you Want to do that while you do your post-stream stuff? Absolutely do that too. You are welcome to stay. We're just giving you a warning.
Yeah, we are just giving you a warning. Because actually, we may as well go into. We may as well just jump right in. Okay, all right, and Tomomoth, and of course, I think you will enjoy it quite a bit. It's a wonderful game. For those of you who want to stick around, I am Almantas, former professor, current VTuber. That not a bit sociology professor. I did used to teach sociology, and Deuscain is.
Hi, I'm Deuscain. I'm a variety type streamer here. I do IT in my daytime life, but I like reading a lot of stuff and books and stories and things like that. So,
yes,
like me some story games.
Yes, and this one's a beautiful story game. It is a horror game. It is a love story. It is all of these things at once.
Yep.
And it is yes. So we were discussing The Prisoner, and so the thing is that we both did the same thing.
Yeah, we both gave her the knife. She removes her head. We take it outside. She's very much alive. At which point we're like, what the hell is going on? And then the hands come and take her away. And I get my first introduction to the Shambling Mound, who explains everything, that she's going to send me back, and she sends me back, and I loop. And
I will say, I saw it coming with The Prisoner. I knew that was the plan. I thought that was fun.
But that wasn't your first chapter, though. This was literally my first introduction. I'm like, I guess the head? I guess? I don't know what was going to happen.
It wasn't... I'm not talking so much about the Shambling Mound part. I'm talking about the fact that I was fully confident she survived that. I was fully confident that this was her plan. That even if she was technically dead, I knew that her objective is to get outside.
Yes.
And if this is what it takes to get outside, this is how she gets outside.
Yeah.
And I felt like the conversation intimated that to you. I thought it was actually, I actually loved that scene a lot because the skeptic and the prisoner are both.
They're very skeptic. They're skeptic. They're wary. They're very like slow to trust. Yeah.
They're slow to trust, but they also are. At least in the conversation I had with them, they both properly identified that they were on the same side, but that they had to deceive a third party that they couldn't mention.
Mm-hmm.
That they were both deceiving the narrator.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed with this. I thought this was both of them being very, very clever. I liked the skeptic and the prisoner a lot, in no small part for this reason.
Yeah. So I meet the Shambling Mound. She loops me back. And like I said, at this point, I'm still on Team Princess. So I look at this and I'm like, well, I don't want to hurt her. Fuck this shit. I'm out. And I turn around and I walk away from the cabin and end up at another identical cabin that I walk away from and end up at another identical cabin. And at that point, I'm like, okay, you know what? Ha, good joke. Screw this. I'm out. And I walk into the woods and you keep walking and there's lights in the distance. And eventually you get to the top of a hill and you turn around and look and it's just hills with cabins on them. Just an endless field of hills with cabins on them. And yes. The world ends. And I got to see The Stranger as my second chapter.
That's very funny. I didn't get The Stranger until my fourth run.
Yeah, so
that's very funny to me.
Yeah, because I literally like, I don't want to hurt this person. I don't want to, I like her. She seems cool. I don't want to hurt her. So my first thing was to try not engaging with the narrative of the narrator of killing her. Which I get The Stranger, and I'm like, okay, what the hell's going on? And then you end up in chapter 2 for The Stranger. You have the contrarian in your head because the narrator's telling you to go forward, you go back, and you just keep defying him over and over again. Which is surprising. It took for me that it took you 4 runs to meet the contrarian because that was essentially what your first run was. You defied him, and it took you so long to actually meet the interesting one that I think would be one of the better voices.
I do actually think I met the Contrarian before then, but like I think I met him in the wild and in like a couple of other chapter 3s.
Yeah,
I don't think I met him
he can show up in other places. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
it's yeah.
Yeah. So I go back to the cabin because I can't not do that anymore. Because one of the things Shambling Mound does is she's like, you have to bring me a different vessel each time, no repeat. So I couldn't walk away anymore. So I had to go up to the cabin. I went down the stairs. I meet the Stranger, which is the princess for that chapter, and she's like a quantum existence of like she's every choice and answer all at once, and it's terrifying and horrifying, and you kill her but don't kill her. Like it's a weird chapter, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit when I got it. But
that was fun. I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah, but same as everybody else, go to the Shambling Mound, come back, restart again. This time I'm like, okay, I'm in the cabin, I'm gonna leave the knife. I go downstairs and I get the damsel. For my chapter 2. And much like you did, I meet her, I meet the smitten, I take her outside, the hands come, they take her away.
Yes.
So then I go back on my 4th loop, and I'm like, okay, let me pick up the knife again, we'll see what else we can do. I go through the usual thing. I just tell her I'm cutting her out this time, because I know the door's gonna lock, because it's locked on me twice already. So I cut her out, I go to leave, I warn her when I'm swinging the knife at her, so she's aware of that, and then I get that next screen, which is all attacks. I'm like, I'm going to scroll down to resist again, and resist is grayed out. I have to try and attack her. And I do, and she knocks me on my ass with one solid hit that basically breaks my ribs and kills me. And the last thing I see is her standing over me. And that brings me to the tower for chapter 4. And meeting the tower, which I left the knife upstairs, because at this point, again, like, I'm not trying to fight her, I'm not trying to hurt her. I'm trying to figure out what this game's mechanics are and like how everything works. Like at this point, I basically figured out the binary for the knife or no knife. But for chapter 2, the tower, I left the knife upstairs. I'm like, okay, I don't want to fight her. I don't know what the tower is. I'm aware of it as a tarot card, that it's a bad time, but well, what is it? And you go downstairs, and she's this big, glowing, like almost deific woman. And you have the broken in your head who's just like, we need to worship her. That's what we need to do. She is everything good in the world, and we are nothing. And it's like, oh. And I try to stop it, and I can't. I have no means of defying her. The broken takes over. He offers his hand to her. We walk her out the door, and we leave. And I go back to the Shambling Mound again, and I'm like, did I fuck up? Because the whole time, like, when you talk with her and you're like, hey, do you want a specific vessel next time? And she says things like, I don't have a preference. I'm actually more interested in what you bring me. These vessels are like a conversation. What do you want to show me? What do you want to share with me? Not something she specifically wants. She's like, it's bad taste to ask for a specific gift. I want to know what you want to tell me and share with me.
Yeah.
But I mentioned that again because at this point, this is my 4th run, and I ask her the question, how many more? And she says, 1 more. Bring me 1 more, and we'll get to the end of this. So I go back in there. I leave the knife upstairs. I start triggering the path to get to the damsel. I warn her about the swing, and much again, I can't resist. And when I go to swing her at her another time, she fights back. She kills me. I get the witch.
Yeah.
I get the witch, and I have the opportunist in my head, and I go up to the cabin again. I'm trying to figure this out, like mechanically. Like, do I take the knife? Do I not take the knife? And I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna have to get her out of here. I'm gonna take the knife with me, and the opportunist is also in my ear, telling me to take the knife too. So I take it. I go downstairs. I meet Princess McFurry, and she's very sly. She's very sinister. She's like, she talks to you and you're like, you are up to some shit, young lady. And you know it immediately. Yeah. But I one of the first things I do to her is I apologize. I'm sorry I attacked you last time. I couldn't stop myself. I didn't have a choice. Like, something literally took me over. I could not stop myself. I'm sorry. And she's like, you gonna help me get out of here? Yeah, sure, absolutely. And she goes, throw me the knife. And I toss her the knife.
Yep.
And she takes one look at it and slips the manacle off of her wrist without using the knife. So she's over there, both hands with my knife. And she walks up slowly to me. And I'm like, so we cool? And she's like, yeah, almost. And proceeds to stab me in the chest. And I fall to the ground and I'm bleeding out. And she's pointing and laughing. She's like, ha, I got you. I got you. And you can see the moment what she does hits her and the regret slam into her. As the last thing you see on her face as you die is just that regret. And I get my first chapter 3, The Thorn.
Yeah. No, the I did not get the thorn for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all coming from my like doubling down on Princess Town, because like, no, I did her a wrong. I'm gonna apologize. She wants me to trust her by giving her the knife. I will. Oh, that backfired in my face. And also, that was my first chapter of meeting the newest voice, because you get another voice in chapter 3 no matter what you do. The cheated. It was just like the first thing he said is like, that bitch, we gave her the knife and she still stabbed us. What the fuck? Which was a fantastic conversation of him in my head with the opportunists as well, because they're both just super pissy about the whole thing.
Yes, absolutely.
But we get up to the cabin and things are different. Cabin's not the same. The woods we're walking through aren't the same. It's like a burnt field where like it's the charred husks of trees, and we get to the cabin and it's just the frame with a door, and that mirror is blocking the way downstairs except when you go to touch it. And you go to walk down the stairs and there's thorn vines there that will let you pass going down, but they're gonna catch and dig into you on the way up. And most importantly, the knife isn't upstairs anymore. I don't have it. She does. And I know that because you go downstairs and there she is, a very human princess again, sitting on a bed of thorns that are wrapped around her, binding her down, but she's holding the knife. And I have this kind of slow conversation with her, just like, hey. She's like, hey, sorry about that. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'm sorry about what I did too. And she's like, well, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's get out of here.
Yep.
And you have this kind of very tepid, very scared conversation about trust, which brings me back to like my earliest conversation with the Cold Princess talking about that. And the whole time I have the opportunist in my head, like, yeah, just get the knife back from her and kill her. The cheat being like, yeah, do it. That bitch killed us first. And I have these people egging me on, but I talk to her, make her feel comfortable. I ask her to give me the knife, and she does. And I cut her loose, and we go to leave, and we get to the stairs, and the vines part, and they leave us alone. I take her upstairs, and she's kind of happy again. And the hands grab her and take her away. And I get my moment with the narrator to talk about it. And I'm just there trying to get information. So I'm like, oh, okay. So you made a god. This god's supposed to kill death, who you also made into a god. And we're in this construct. And okay, I'm getting this now. I'm locking in on what's happening. And each time you ask the narrator a question, the mirror he's being reflected out of shatters and breaks. And I run out of questions, and I have to go deal with her. And yeah, that final boss fight against the Shambling Mound, where, because you didn't go into mechanically, but it's very interesting because like you start talking off with her a little bit, and then she, like, the music changes, you get like visual reactions as like transitions between scenes, and she piece by piece will summon the other princesses you've dealt with and interacted with, and they'll kind of share with you their perspective on things. I don't remember what the thorn said, but I remember the tower being like, yeah, might makes right. You know, I'm a god, you should worship me. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not, and you were wrong. And I shouldn't. Yeah. But I got to the damsel, and she's like, I really loved you. And my answer was like, yeah, I loved you too. I miss you. I miss you. And it's this interesting moment of affirming or denying their individual perspectives. And very much, I got to the point where she's just like, you're not listening to me. And I'm like, well, you're not listening to me either. So where are we going to go from here? And you get that voice in your head of the hero who jumps in and is like, hey boss, we're going to get into her heart. We're going to fix this. And he takes you into the heart. He takes you into the cabin. And one thing you didn't mention in yours that I love, that I thought was just a very nice little like character moment, is you get into the cabin, the narrator's gone, but the night, like, you look around and the hero's in your head, and he's like, hey, do you want me to narrate for you what we're doing, what we're seeing one last time? And I'm like, yeah, you know what, buddy, one last time, for old time's sake.
I did like that.
And it's like, it's a very tender moment that doesn't need to be there, but they give you the option of, if you want to experience it, you can, and it makes a difference. So I talk with him about the knife, and he's like, the knife, we usually have more options with the knife than we do without. So I take the knife and I go downstairs, and I get what I always kind of like refer to as like the human princess, because she's not the cold one, she's not the sweet one, she's like a person. She's more of a person than all the rest of them are. The rest of them are just kind of like distortions of that core part of her, like almost like a kaleidoscope. They're like reflections and refractions.
Yeah.
And here I'm talking with her, and she basically, it comes down to two options. She's like, you're either going to have to kill me here to stop her, or we've got plan B. And I'm like, well, plan B's got to be better than plan A. What's plan B? And she's like, well, she was able to use her power to send you back to get more vessels. I'm her, and whatever you believe I can do, I can do. So if you think I can send you back even further to reset everything, I can do that. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is I guess this is the best plan. Like, or is this gonna work though? She's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, what if we've done it already? And she's like, we have no idea. This might be the first time. This might be the millionth time. We don't know. And I kind of sat there watching that scene happen, and I'm like, we are at the same question about blind trust again. I don't know if this is the right choice. I don't know if we've done this before, and this is me having a choice of am I going to save the world and damn her, or am I going to save her and damn the world, or I don't know what. But I'm just like, okay, let's go with your plan. Let's reset everything. Let's start the game again. And I give her the knife, and she pulls her arm up to take a swing at me. And the last thing I get to say to her is, I get to tell her I love you. And she looks away for a second. She's like, yeah, I love you too. And stabs me in the chest. And the next thing I know, I'm on a path in the woods. At the end of that path is a cabin. In the basement of that cabin is a princess. And the narrator tells me I have to kill her to save the world. And I get that achievement of just like, you're on a path in the woods. I'm like, that's so good. Yeah. And it's such a good narrative about trust and the importance of trust, and the fact that I start with the cold princess and the prisoner and trusting them both and going all in on the concept of trust, and end it on the thorn, who then takes me into this moment where I trust in her idea to reset everything, even though I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if I'll resurrect again. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's the best choice I've got that doesn't involve killing her. So let's go with it. And it's just, even though like by that point I kind of figured out the game of like, it's modular. Each chapter is the different vessels you can bring her, and those can change, but you still, the fact that I got them lined up in this way that had this very strong story about love and trust, and ending with like the lesson of like, well, yeah, you're going to hurt them and they're going to hurt you, and you're going to have to make amends of that, and you're going to have to make it work out. And being able to do that, taking me then to that final choice of resetting everything and putting my trust in her and giving her the knife at the very end of the game, was this really powerful narrative throughout the game that just, it felt so natural, even though mechanically I understand this is modular and I was never guaranteed to get this particular path, but it worked. It felt like they crafted this as the one true story the whole time, even though I know it's not made that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's. I mean, there's a thing about that, right? That is within the. This is a phrasing from cosmology, from the study of cosmology and from the study of history, which is we only get one history. There's only one history of the universe, and the story between the shifting mound and the long quiet is that they are kind of the grandest metaphysical concepts for what the future and the past could ever be.
Okay.
And so, like, there is no whatever ending they get is always is kind of a grand. This is one of those funny things about it being a video game, right? Is that their claim to what happens in the ending is that this is everything forever, is whatever ending happens. Whatever ending happens is everything, is the whole rest of the universe is going to be there. And so, yeah, whatever ending you get is going to feel like the true ending. It has to, or else it's kind of silly.
True, but I do kind of like the one ending that I got was the one that's just like, oh, this is going to be the permanent change of the universe? Nuh-uh, we're just going to do this forever. It reminds me of the end of the movie What Dreams May Come, starring Robin Williams. Have you seen that one?
I have not. I have not.
Spoilers for of an old Robin Williams film, but I do recommend. But he realizes that he died. He is in heaven. He is happy, and he's like, "Where's my?" He's meeting all the people he knew and he loved. And he's like, "Well, where's my wife?" And they're like, "She didn't make it." And he's like, "What do you mean she didn't make it?" They're like, "She's in the bad place." And he goes on this quest and this mission down to hell to find his wife. And that's what the movie's about. It's this beautiful metaphorical film. In the end, he succeeds because it's a happy movie. And they're happy again, and they're together again, and everything's great. And they're like, "Well, what do we do next?" He's like, "Let's get reincarnated." And she's like, "Why? We've just found each other, and we have everything." And he's like, "Yeah, we've got everything but the chase. If we go back, we can find each other again. Let's do it." And that's that kind of like that narrative theme is what I got out of the ending that I got, where it's just the end leads to the beginning, which leads to the end, and the end isn't important. The journey is. The journey of meeting this person, falling in love with this person, fighting this person, falling out of love with this person, falling back in love with this person. That cyclical cycle of romance and relationship is life and living, and in a way that most of the other options and choices you get aren't. They are death in some capacity. It's either the long quiet of stagnation or the like brutal evolution that is the princess of just all change all times, all change all the time, all at once. Like, so it's neat.
Go ahead.
I like it.
It is neat. It is neat. I think it's such a cool damn game. I think it's such a damn cool game. What was I going to say? A thing that I found quite striking about I was so mistrusting of the narrator, and maybe I should talk a little bit more about like what the nature of my mistrust was. And so I used to be a sociology professor, and I spent a lot of my last couple of years being pretty politically active. And the most untrustworthy type of person that I found over my years of dealing with sleazy politicians was the type of person who substitutes dire straits for explaining why you need to do something.
Fair.
If somebody does the sort of reverse Pascal's wager, they are just lying to you every single fucking time. And the only reason why they are continuing to double down like that is because they are looking for people who are so gullible and gung-ho that you can talk them into anything.
And sadly, there are those people. There's
many of those people. I've met dozens, if not hundreds of them. And so when the narrator says, "You need to go to this cabin and slay the princess or the world will end," and then you go, "Wait, hold on. Can you explain why?"
And he says no.
Goes, no. I'm like, okay, this guy's a scam. This guy's a scammer. This is a con artist.
Which, if I can jump ahead a little bit, there's actually an interesting reason why he can't do that, which is the way he built this construct that you're in. She'll change based on who perceives her. So if you know how she works and you know the mechanics, she can kind of become anything, and you're gonna, like, while you're trying to drive the car right, you're gonna subconsciously be turning it left, so you have to go in blind. That's why he took his own life. He's like, even me being on the outside, knowing how this works, will ruin it. I have to die, and you have to be the only one who knows her and meets her for this to work. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Not having that context, not understanding why he's doing it, it does absolutely look incredibly shady. What he's doing and why.
Yeah, I was deeply enthusiastic about ruining his day. I was deeply enthusiastic about ruining his day, and because his whole shtick is, I know more than you, I know better than you. you don't get to know things, you get to obey, I get to command. And these are just sentiments that I find deeply offensive. That I will react extremely strongly against, and will do everything in my power to interfere with and undermine. And so that was a fundamental element of like what was going on with my my reaction to Mr. Narrator. Was this guy reminds me, this guy has triggered every response I have of shut the fuck up, get the fuck out of here. I don't trust you at all. You do not have anyone's best interest at heart. And then when I understand what his plan is and my own contextualization of his plan, which again starts from a standpoint of extremely negative sentiment, but when I get a better understanding of the nature of his plan, which is to end the concept of things changing.
Stop death forever.
That he wants to be the villain from Final Fantasy VIII. I'm not enthusiastic. I'm not into this. And so that said, so that was my like naive run. That was my naive run. What do you think was my second run, Mr. Kane?
I'm not sure, because you definitely, I know you said you got the Contrarian later in run number 4. You met the Thorn in like number 3. Did you go full violence on number 2? Did you just trust the narrator and just went full violence? Because honestly, that's what I did. I went full violence on number 2, and I'm like, let's.
Number 2, I got the quote unquote good ending.
Okay, yeah, I did that. Yes, which is, to be clear, the good ending that we're both laughing about a little bit here. Yeah. You walk in, you stab her, you leave. And when you can't leave, you're stuck in an eternal void, and the narrator's like, so you're happy now forever, right? And you're like, I guess. And he goes, good. And you get an ending credits scene. It's literally like the fastest ending in almost any game I've ever seen. But it's incredibly unsatisfying. Funny. Like, it's so unsatisfying. The ending, like, art that you get is cartoonish.
Yes.
It taunts you.
And so I didn't actually write down what my 4th run was. I wrote down my 3rd run, but not my 4th run. My 3rd run, I got a lot of chapter 3s.
Same.
I went Spectre into Wraith, because I went maximum violence. So,
Spectre into Wraith.
Spectre, Wraith, then Razor to Arms Race to Mutually Assured Destruction, the only chapter 4 that I can name.
There are 2. There are only 2. Both
of
which are from the Razor. It's the Razor leading to Mutually Assured Destruction, and the Razor leading to the Empty Cup, which I've done both.
Okay, I haven't done Empty Cup.
Empty Cup is
Tower into Fury. Nightmare into Clarity.
Oh, Moment of Clarity.
Stranger into Nightmare into Clarity, yeah. Clarity's fun.
Yeah, Moment of Clarity is amazing. That's a great chapter.
Yeah.
So, my second run, first one I met was the Razor into Mutually Assured Destruction. Which, to be clear,
Razor.
To explain to people what the Razor is, the Razor is you kill her, you go to check the body, and you're like, yeah, I don't know if she's dead. Let me check her. And you take the knife out, and when you do, she stabs you with a weapon you can't see. And then the next time you meet her, she's got blades for hands, and she can pop knives out of her body. And you have the cheated in your head, being very upsetty spaghetti about all of this.
And when I said the witch is the second worst liar, the Razor is a worse liar than the witch.
I'd argue that, because some of them just aren't lying at all. The Tower isn't lying, and the Tower is just very.
The Tower's not lying.
Tower's very honest. Like, she's not trying to lie. But yeah, the Razor is very. The Razor's very cheeky. Like, oh, I'm just an innocent princess. Won't you come over here? And like, you got the cheated in your head. He's like, that bitch has a knife. Like, he's just like, we know she's got a knife.
This incredibly deadpan delivery of, what do you mean? I would never harm you.
She has like an echo on her voice too. She has some kind of like vocalization going on. But yeah,
it's a pretty funny run. I enjoyed her quite a bit.
I think you'd enjoy the Empty Cup. Like, while we're on the topic of the Razor, let's talk about the two options here, because Mutually Assured Destruction is you continue to try and fight the Razor, and you fail. If you run from her, I think you can trigger the Wraith. I think is one of the options you can spark off of that. But if you continue to try and fight her, you get Mutually Assured Destruction, which is just this all out death match with like you with your knife against her, which the last chapter 4 you meet her and she's like, hey, I've been waiting for you, and while I waited I figured out how to do this, and her skin just twists and it's just a skeleton of blades with a single beating heart at the middle of it.
It's
and
pretty cool.
It's dope as fuck. And mutually assured destruction is the two of you fight it out, you kill her and the hands take her away. The empty cup is interesting, and I think you'd like to play this and see it firsthand, but I am going to explain it, which is when you get to chapter 2 for the razor, or maybe it's chapter 3, you leave the knife upstairs. I think you leave the knife upstairs in chapter 2. And when you get to chapter 3, the cheat, it's like, nope, we're not starting on the path. We're just back in the cabin, which he does anyways. So that's part of chapter 3. But when you do that, and you're like, and the narrator's like, okay, and there's a knife on the table, and the contrarian is in your head, and he goes, except it's not, bitches, and takes the knife and throws it out the window.
Yeah, that's always funny when you can throw the knife out the window.
No, the contrarian does it, and there's no stopping him. If you go down this route, it is unstoppable. He throws it out, and when you go back and repeat that chapter over and over again, because the razor just kills you over and over again. That's the whole deal with her. When you do it and you come back, the knife stays gone. Once the contrarian throws it away, it's gone forever. Which is entertaining because the narrator's like losing his mind about like, where's the knife? And you're like, we got rid of that last time. He's like, what do you mean last time? Because also the narrator doesn't know that we're looping other until you get like to a chapter where it's like the trees are bleeding and have eyes on them. He's like, that's not normal. What did you do?
He does not like the knowledge that of the looping. He does not like learning that.
Yeah. Because it also means we failed at one point. He doesn't like that either. But no, the empty cup is you go to fight her and you don't have a weapon. So like she goes to stab you and you're not there. And like it's you waking up to being the long quiet a little bit early, and she's like fighting you in the void where like she feels you're in a spot and goes to stab it and you're not there. And all of a sudden like her hand just gets dented back in, and the knife fingers are broken. And bit by bit, as like a phantom force, you tear apart her metal body until just the heart is there on like you kind of like peel back her chest. And in that particular case, for the mutually assured destruction, the hands come and take away the entire razor, the entire like skeleton, like body of this woman. For the empty cup, it's just the heart. They're literally just holding a heart in their hands. And you just got another raid.
I did. Babinka Bear.
I'll give him a shout out from my end while you say your things.
Hello, Babinka Bear. It is I, Almantas, former professor, current VTuber. I almost shouted myself out right there. I was going to ask what you were doing, Babinka Bear, but I know what you're doing. Babinka Bear was studying hieroglyphics. Ooh. Because Babinka Bear is extremely cool like that. I hope that you learned some things about hieroglyphics. I have a YouTube video about hieroglyphics sitting in my open tabs for about 2 years now that I haven't gotten around to watching. So I'm clearly very serious about learning hieroglyphics. But yes, for those of you who do not know me, I am Almantas, former professor, current VTuber, old man who loves old things. And welcome in Babinka Bear, and Pickle the Little Dill, and Matthew Rice Seeker, and Mega Bronson, and Yuki ENVT. And me and Deuscain.
Hello.
Say hello, Deus. We are discussing Slay the Princess, because we played through Slay the Princess recently, and Slay the Princess was my #1 game of 2024. I adored it, and we wanted to discuss what we thought and felt about it. So as a warning, this is an extremely spoilery discussion. You learned a lot. Excellent. Yeah, Pickles the Little Dill. Why would I not say your full name, Pickles the Little Dill? All right, excellent. Yes, please enjoy your lunch. Please enjoy your lunch, Babinka Bear.
Also, additional warning: this game has massive content warning.
We are being a lot more circumspect than the game is, but the game
the game likes its blood and gore.
Tame parts of the game are like people eating their own arms. Like it gets. I don't know if I'd say that's super tame. The decapitation scene is on the tamer side, though.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot real fast.
Yeah, it gets pretty intense.
But yeah,
and so yeah, we
were talking about the razor and discussing the difference between the chapter 4 mutually assured destruction and chapter 4 the empty cup, where like that's why there's like 2 different ending scenes for in the gallery for that, because one of them is mutually assured destruction and one of them is the empty cup, because literally she's different. Like when you take her back to the Shambling Mound, it's just the heart for the empty cup. When you see her at the end of the game, it's just the heart. Like it's just a bunch of hands holding up a heart. And it's just like, won't you think of this pretty little heart here? So that's it's a very interesting difference between those 2. But you essentially, this is an interesting point here. You can never lose the game as you're playing through it either. Like no matter what choice you make, even if she overpowers you and is like, and it's a tower and it's just like, yeah, I'm stronger than you, I'm better than you, we're leaving now. You don't lose. Even when you die, all that does is loop you again, which also that should be an interesting bit of discussion here, because essentially there are like 2 or 3 ways to get out of a particular chapter. Obviously, she kills you, you loop to the next chapter, and that is a standard mechanic throughout the game. If you take her outside, that's the end. She's going to the Shambling Mound, and that's a standard mechanic throughout the game. If you kill her or try to kill her, that's where things get a little bit fuzzy, and sometimes it leads to an ending of a chapter. Sometimes it leads to, and like takes you to the Shambling Mound. Sometimes it leads to the next chapter, and occasionally it leads you to the ending, which is
sometimes it gives you the good ending, which is the only way to lose the game as far as I am concerned.
Which is funny because I did that because technically my second run was just the good ending, because I knew about the good ending. I wanted to do it and get out of the way.
Good ending.
But then I ended up in the route for the prisoner again later on my second run. So talking about my second run, I did the Razor into Mutually Assured Destruction. I did the Witch into the Wild. I did the Tower into the Fury. I did the Prisoner into the Cage, and I did the Nightmare. And I actually was trying to get the Nightmare into the Moment of Clarity, but I screwed it up. I thought I left the knife upstairs with the idea that I was going to have her come back up. I was going to pick up the knife behind her and stab her in the back. And we got upstairs. And she's like, "Oh, you're not going to need this pesky knife," and throws out the window. And I'm like, "Shit, I fucked up." But the Fury is actually a really interesting one. But before we get into that, the Prisoner and the Cage is a fun one, where we're talking about what do you do when you get in the good ending and you want to leave. The Prisoner, I give her the knife, she cuts off her head. I go upstairs and the narrator's like, "Hey, congratulations, it's a good ending." And I'm like, "Nope, I want to leave." And you go back downstairs, you take the knife back and you take your own life. And that brought me to the Cage. And I'm like, oh, okay, so that's what we're doing with this now. Okay. And yeah, the Cage is weird and interesting.
The Cage I haven't done. I have not done the Cage. I've only gotten the Prisoner the once, which was like one of my first ones.
Yeah. The Cage is one of the ones, one of the new ones for the Pristine Cut too. Because originally, leaving the head would bring you to an ending, a chapter 3 called The Drowned, or the Gray, the Drowned. It's another one for the Gray. Because the princess called the Gray has a burned one and a drowned one, and I think it's if you kill the prisoner instead of her killing herself, I think that still brings you back to the Gray, but otherwise, like, it'll take you to the Cage where just neither of you get out and you're stuck there. But the Fury was an interesting one for me, because the way I got to it was you go to the tower. This time you take the knife from upstairs. When you go downstairs and she starts putting on her god power on you, you have the option to strike back at her. And I cut her like Achilles tendon. And the moment you do that, she's like, "No, I hate this. I can feel this affecting me. I can feel myself changing. Why did you do that?" And she kills you and you loop again. But that changes and affects her and alters her. So you actually have an option of defiance against the tower. And that was my full violence run. So like I go to meet the Fury, and she basically, like, her power just allows her, I think the term is unwind, but she just turns you into spaghetti. Like just renders
spontaneously unravels you.
Yeah.
The whole body.
And that was such an interesting time running into that from the tower, especially when you take the knife with you, because I think the Stubborn's in my head then, and he's just like, "Yeah, nope, we're fighting back." And like, you form a body out of the ether and you charge her again, and she just unwinds you again and unwinds you again and unwinds you again. And she starts doing that on like a molecular level and just frying you until eventually like there's no body, there's no soul, but you're still there. And as a ghost, you come up and kill her. And you get out there. But it was after I did that run, that second run through and met that particular version of the Fury, I met that person online who was a big fan of The Opportunist. And they actually had a little music video that they made set to the tune of like that Vocaloid song, like Oh My R or something like that. Like it's like a
familiar.
What was that?
I am not familiar. I don't recognize
it's kind of like a song about a girl that's going up to commit suicide.
Okay.
But it's a bit of a meme song, but it's very sweet. And what's interesting is instead of having the tower be this aggressive thing that just kept murdering me all the time, this was showing scenes in it with like the tower, or not the tower, the Fury, and showing her being like tender almost. I'm like, what? Where? How do I get this? How do I get to this version of the Fury? And I kept. Then that's a thing I did. Each of my following runs was try to get to the Fury and see that particular variation. So my third run, I still did the tower into the Fury. I still cut her ankle. I still went and met her, but this time I left the knife upstairs and I tried talking to her, and she just straight up unwinds you and just does it over and over again. And that's an interesting interaction because she just like, she does it to you and she's like, hey, I'm going to do this to find out how much you can take. And if you're still there. So she unwinds you. She's like, are you still there? Are you still you? And you're like, yep. And the hero's like, yep. And the stubborn's like, yep. And she does it over and over again. I think at one point she like basically like squishes you down into like only a couple centimeters tall, but you're just a few miles wide. Like that's what she does to you. And at this, like as this process goes on, different voices in your head start tapping out, and even eventually the stubborn stops, and just
which is pretty impressive because he's stubborn.
Yeah, right? And she beats. She's like, "Are you still there? Are you still you?" And the stubborn's like, "No, I'm not anymore." And he goes silent, and it ends up with her beating you. And what she does is she ends up unwinding herself and trying to wind the two of you together.
Oh, yeah, I definitely did not get that. No,
which is interesting because you talked about the beast and the beast eating you. And why did that happen? It's just fetish. And it's not. She's trying to merge with you because originally you were both one god and you're drawn together that way. I ran into a similar thing in another chapter called The Princess and the Dragon, another one of the Pristine Cut chapters.
I do like the Princess Dragon chapter.
Yes, I
like Dragon a lot.
That might be my favorite chapter out of all of them after the Thorn. But that's another one where the two of you are combining. The two of you are merging into something because that's your natural state. It's unnatural that you were pulled apart. So she tries to do this artificially. It does not work. It just kills her. Like she ends up like killing herself by accident doing that. But I eventually did get the Fury round that I wanted. What you have to do is go to the adversary route, which we didn't talk about. The adversary is like, you tell her like, hey, I'm going to fight you. And then you try and stab her and she fights you back and you have this great grand fight. And the two of you die together. And then you get the adversary who's kind of demonic looking in a way, like very traditional, like tiefling demon. And you have the stubborn in your head. And obviously you can just have a knockdown drag out fight with her. And that leads to, I think, the Eye of the Needle, which I believe you said you've also gotten, which is just...
I think I've done that one.
Visually,
I do remember Adversary.
Visually,
strong.
Yeah, visually, Eye of the Needle isn't very distinct from the Adversary. It's just like a bigger, brawnier adversary that fights you in like a tighter space. But going from the Adversary to the Fury, what you have to do is when you go to meet the Adversary, you turn and run. You leave the knife upstairs, and you turn and run. And she's like, how dare you disrespect me that way? She breaks your shackle, she runs up and kills you. And for chapter 3, going into the Fury, you've got the stubborn in your head and you've got the broken in your head, in addition to your other voices. And she does the whole spaghetti thing again. And this time everybody taps out except the broken. And at the end of it, he's still there for her. He's still talking to her. And she just kind of like sits down. She's like, what's the point? And snaps you back together in a body. And you walk over to her and you offer her your hand and you walk her outside and the two of you leave together. And it's this kind of like almost tender moment of like somebody that's just is like a raw nerve, and the broken not having gone through the tower, not being influenced by the tower himself, is able to empathize with her and have kind of a shared humanity of like, yeah, we've both been through some pain. We've both been through some suffering. Here, let me take your hand. Let me help you. And it still leads to the hands taking her away, the same as it always does when you take her outside. But it is an interesting and much more tender ending to the Fury, which is a chapter that I wasn't really expecting to have any kind of tenderness, and that's why I really wanted to go down that route when I found out it was possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, a couple of the princesses for chapter 3 can be achieved through multiple options. The Wild is one of them because you got it through the den the beast, because she eats you and you merge together. I got it through the witch because like I fought her to a standstill and basically like the earth of the cabin like grabbed us both and trapped us down there and like kind of combined us that way. And then I forget who else can go into the Wild. Where is it? A lot of it's the beast and the witch, I think. Yeah, I think it's mostly beast and witch. But interesting thing about the Wild, I was reading up about this a little bit. The Wild is one of the 2 princesses that can both detect the construct you're in and is trying to break it. She almost succeeds. She actually, like, I think you saw this in yours where like you're like spiting the narrator. She goes off and finds like a crack in the construct and starts trying to break it, and then the hands come and take her away before she can succeed.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you go back into the tower again, there's a chapter called the Apotheosis.
The Apotheosis.
The Apotheosis.
I did not get that. I tried to get that one and failed. That one I spoiled myself on and did not manage to successfully get.
Yeah, that was in my 4th run where I had the a guide in front of me. I did my first 2 runs mostly blind, aside from like the good ending, which I knew how to do that. But run 3 and 4, I had a guide. I'm trying to get these ones to fill out the gallery and meet these princesses. So, but the Apotheosis, that was an interesting one because what I did was I went to the tower, I took the knife, and when she like tells you to do something, you have the option like to get up and go defy her, or you can turn the knife on yourself. And if you do that, she kind of is very boastful about, see, I made you kill yourself. I'm the one really empowered, really in control. And she feels super powerful. So when you get to the Apotheosis, she's bigger than the tower. Like the cabin is floating on an island in the sky, and she is just massive behind it in an almost like Shadow of the Colossus size princess who is essentially an evolved tower and is able to actually crack the construct and try and get out, though she stopped before she could do that. In my run, I took the knife and threw it in her eye, and that blinded her, and I was able to beat her that way.
Nice.
But apparently if you don't do that, or if you don't try and hurt her, or if you don't take the knife, she can actually crack the construct and try and get out as she is.
Interesting.
Which is interesting that she can be that powerful just in non-perfect form. But so yeah, we've gone through a lot of our run stuff here. I do have ads starting in about 3 minutes, but we talked earlier about how you liked it a lot from like the themes and the
Absolutely.
concepts of it, whereas I liked a lot of the mechanics stuff. So why don't we run the ad break a little bit early, and then we'll come back and discuss those?
Yes. Pickles a little dill, thank you for the follow. But yes,
Likewise.
I think that sounds like the right move. So we will be back in about 3 minutes.
Yep, about 3 minutes, folks. Talk to you soon.
far back.
Yep.
So to get into talking about some of the deeper themes and such of it, let's talk about something that really struck me, which was, so my very first route that I got was the damsel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the damsel is that, so that kind of primed me to think that the damsel was a kind of normal route. That I was not actually on the very far outside of the possible. And it turns out that the damsel is very much on the fringes of what is considered what we might consider a normal run.
Yeah, she's probably the most conservative and safe of all the runs, I think. Like, there's
Depends on what you consider conservative and safe.
Well, I mean, there's no like crazy body horror. There's no like knives popping out of her.
Yeah.
She's not.
It is the
hurting
least horror.
Yes.
Is the least horror of the various princesses that you run into. Which is interesting. And again, I was kind of expecting that the horror would be used. That primed me to think the horror would be used somewhat more sparingly and more strategically. Oh, Dania, welcome in. Sorry, I really like Dania, so it's always good to see them.
I don't mind you shouting out your friends. Hello.
I was considering Dania as a potential raid target at the end of this, but I guess not. But I was kind of primed by the damsel being my first one to think of the damsel as being somewhat normative, and obviously that is not true. The damsel is a very outlier. It's a very far outlier.
Yes.
And this was one of the places where I actually kind of brushed up against feeling like there was almost a writing inconsistency. During the final moments with the shifting mound at the end of a run, the shifting mound will push back against you and frankly insult you, neg you for being passive, for always being passive and reactive. And I felt like that was not the case. I felt like the dragon was pretty strong. Yeah, I'm glad, Dania, that you're getting a reasonable ending time. It's somewhere around 10 p.m. for you. Yeah, somewhere around 10 or 11 p.m. for you. But I feel like it's very. Yeah. To back up for Dania's sake and for everybody else, I got damsel first because my initial reaction to the narrator was, I hate this guy, and I'm going to do everything in my power to foil the narrator. I do not trust the narrator. Whatever the narrator says is a bad idea. I'm going to make him miserable. And it turns out if you do everything possible to make him miserable, you get the damsel.
Well, sort of. Like, the first thing you can do to defy him is not go to the cabin at all, which takes you to the contrarian. But you probably didn't have your opinion formed on him yet until you were already at the cabin. Once you're there, you can't leave.
Mm-hmm. No, I was actually planning on doing something even worse from his perspective, which was actively help the princess escape.
Yeah, we do try. Unless you try and kill her in chapter 1, your only option is to try and get her out, and then the narrator will interfere.
Yep. So the thing about the damsel is the most kind of straightforward love story. It's very much it's very Don Quixote-esque. Is it's a very like classical romance, and so if you go to the damsel and you talk to the damsel and you say, "What do you want?" Which to me is a very normal thing to ask a person. I am a very much a person who says, well, because I've got my anthropology and sociology backgrounds, and I have seen many times that a good way to make things worse is to assume that you know what is best for other people. Another reason why I hated the narrator so viscerally. Why I found him so viscerally repulsive. And so you ask the damsel, what do you want? And she goes, I don't know, what do you want? And then you say, well, what do you want? And then, I don't know, what do you want? And
it's very passive that way, yeah.
She decoheres completely. And you get the ending, a pliant heart. as opposed to a gentle heart, which is the normal ending for the damsel. You get a pliant heart.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, she like she is drawn increasingly poorly. In a series until eventually the entire universe unravels. It is very funny that this is a thing that causes the universe to be destroyed. Is the stereotypical conversation of, well, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner? What do you want? I'm sorry, babe. What do you want for dinner? Like that causes that is like an existential threat to the universe. But where I was kind of going with this is that I kind of read the damsel plotline as something as kind of intended to be kind of empty. Kind of intended to be empty, less interesting, less loving than average than the other routes. And it's also the only route that is that is by default non-violent. Most of the routes are quite violent.
I don't even know if you can have a violent interaction with her. You can attack her, but I don't know if she'll ever attack you.
I don't know if she'll ever attack you. You can kill yourself and you can kill her.
Yeah.
Those are both viable. Those are things that will cause endings. And of course you can destroy the universe in two different ways that are very funny. That you have two different ways of doing that. But where I'm going with this is that the game seems to come from a thesis of romance that violence is necessary. And
it kind of says that at one point where like I think that her conversation with you at the end when it's the big boss fight, she talks about like, we're gonna have a conversation. Since words failed us, we're gonna use the oldest and truest language, violence.
Yes,
like something like that. Yeah, it's
and it was something that I found striking and interesting and a little bit repugnant to myself, and my own theories of what a good and healthy relationship looks like, and I never quite figured out how to settle this in my mind. I don't know how much is intended to be generalized to relationships in general, and how much is supposed to be about the fact that we are not talking about a relationship between people so much as a relationship between gods, and gods who have been violently separated.
Against their will,
Against their will, and recrafted as weapons against each other. Right? They have been the Echo has taken two things that used to be one thing and made them two things that are designed to destroy each other. That is the intended roles that you're playing, and so how could you not play these things out? But at the same time, it is kind of striking, kind of interesting that change happens via murder. That change happens via murder, that change happens via violence, that change happens via the two of you pushing against each other and refusing to accept each other and harming each other. That is a thing that that the Long Quiet frequently says to the Shifting Mound is, we're just going to hurt each other again. Which the Shifting Mound is quite placid about. Is quite placid about. And of course, I don't know, that seemed like oddly toxic to me. It seemed like an oddly toxic ideology to me.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, remember also that these are two metaphysical concepts that also are manifesting in extremes. Like, you don't go from like, oh, she's kind of cute to kind of liking her. The Smitten is all in 110% pro princess. He is the simpiest of simps. He is Don Quixote. He is out there. He is loud and proud and boastful and bragging. There is no like notch it up a little bit. It's 0 or 100. And so I understand her argument, like conflict is important and is part of the universe. It's part of how people communicate. And I actually agree with that, but it's taken to such an extreme because they are creatures and entities of extremes.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense to me. I wasn't so repulsed by it as you. I'm just like, okay, yeah, you're still wrong though, because you're still just like, yeah, I'm gonna blow up everything because that's what I am. And I'm like, you're trying to get out of this cage to be free, but you're not free. You're actually more of a prisoner than you ever were, because you are trapped within yourself and by yourself. You don't have a choice. I have the choice, and I've always had the choice. You're just running on instinct at this point. Like she sounds intelligent, but the way she acts and behaves is just as reactionary as it's always been.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's. But yeah, I don't know. That was always, again. I am a romance guy, and I was reading this very much as romance, and it was kind of interesting, this question of like, to what extent do I feel comfortable advocating for these as a couple, like to what extent do I feel optimistic about what these folks are doing.
And I agree with you that some of them do work as a couple. The Smitten and the Damsel are a great couple. The Skeptic and the Prisoner are a great couple. I can see the Opportunist and the Witch working out. Then you start getting some really toxic ones in there, like the Razor versus the Cheated, or the Paranoid against the Nightmare.
Yes.
Or even the Cold and the Spectre are still, they're not a healthy relationship at all. They're very bad.
I did like the Cold and the Spectre. As just like not necessarily like as a couple, but I did like their interactions. And I found the options that you have with the Cold and the Spectre to be quite fun.
I think one of my favorite interactions is when you go into the Damsel chapter. If you take the knife and stab her, the Smitten freaks out. He stabs himself, and you go into chapter 3, the Gray, where it's I
haven't played that one yet. I have not done that one yet. I'm excited.
It's so good. I'll just say, you spend a large chunk of that at the beginning with the Smitten raging that we've killed the most beautiful thing in all creation, and the other thing that's in your head with him is the Cold. And it is such a fantastic back and forth between those two, as like the hero and the narrator just sitting there with popcorn watching these two go at it. Because literally at one point it's like the Smitten is just like, I'm gonna make you feel something. I will. And the Cold just gives his very logical, dispassionate version of bring it, bitch. I think he says like, I'd like to see you try. And it's just like, yeah, the Smitten's just like, I will make you feel something. And the Cold's like, no, you won't. I do not feel, I think. I'm logic incarnate. And
the Cold is interesting because the Cold does have feelings, but the feelings are mostly curiosity.
Yes.
I found the Cold actually pretty sympathetic as a person who is mostly driven by curiosity in life.
Mm-hmm.
I found him pretty compelling.
He's less repugnant than somebody like the Opportunist, who is exactly the type of person to be like, you say one thing and he tells you not to. He tells you not to do something, and then you're like, yeah, okay, but we're gonna do this. He's like, yeah, buddy, you're right. I was on your side the whole time. And he's absolutely gonna flip sides to whoever is winning.
The ones who got the most on my nerves were the Broken and the Cheated.
Fair.
Who are driven by their mood to the exclusion of considering the world around them. Right, that was really bugged me about them.
That's fair, but I also see the Smitten a little bit like that too. Like, he doesn't care about the world around him. He doesn't care what the narrator says. He's a more likable character, I agree. But he and the Broken are kind of like polar opposites on the relationship spectrum, whereas the Broken is just absolutely bowing down to his partner, whereas the Smitten is the one in charge in that relationship.
Yeah, I have a lot more sympathy for simps than for doomers.
Yeah, and that is definitely that is what the that is absolutely what the Broken is, because he's been through some stuff and he doesn't know how to process and deal with it, and he's just shut down. He's tapped out, and it's his chapter 2s are not great. His chapter 3s are amazing. because you have this person that's just like, I've known pain, I've dealt with pain, I'm gonna help you deal with pain, and that's a very interesting. His encounter with the Fury, if you get to that without going through the tower first, is actually genuinely really good. One thing that I think would be interesting for you, because I was looking through, I found like a chart that I used to kind of help me navigate this thing. One of the I mentioned the Thorn as a chapter that I like a lot, and you can only get to it through the Witch. The two options for the voice you could add for your chapter 3, the Thorn, are the Cheated, which is what I encountered, where she kills you. But if you give her the blade as a show of trust, I assume she still kills you, but you can flirt with her and try and romance her, which puts the Smitten in your head for chapter 3, the Thorn. So it would be Smitten with the Opportunist, and obviously the hero and the narrator, and the Smitten going in against the Thorn, where imagine like more opposite sides of that relationship, where the Smitten's like, no honey, it's fine, I forgive you, whereas the Cheated is like, you bitch, you stabbed me. And just the polar opposites of what that experience is like. So it's neat.
So to talk about like what I thought was kind of like thematically interesting and striking about this was, for one thing, like there's very much this linkage between violence and change and development and growth. And it is something that's a little bit interesting in that I find that somewhat gross as a person who is very non-confrontational and non-violent, but also that this is one of those things that, like, once you kind of figure out what the structure of the game is, where where the Long Quiet and the Shifting Mound gets to hang out whenever they both die, and then they just get to come back. It really shaves off the consequences of that. Like, how much are we truly talking about death if there is very easy, low consequence resurrection from it?
Yeah, and actually the narrator addresses that at the end, if you ask the right series of questions, because he does have like sub questions that you can get to, and you're like, he's just like, yeah, if death gets out, everybody's gonna die. You can actually say to him like, I've died plenty of times, it's fine. He's like, no, you haven't. You've reset inside the construct. If you die outside, it's for real and it's forever, and so is it for everybody else. You don't want that, which is an interesting topic, because it's a consequence-free, violent environment, and it's interesting to see what the player does in that place once you realize how it works.
Yes, the a story that I always liked from a fantasy novel, Cain Black Knife, which is a beautiful novel. The one of the things in that series that I thought was always very funny was they have like D&D style paladins as one of the as a social group inside the setting. And so one of the things that happens, that the narrator, who is not part of this group, but does some of their rituals with them, once you gain the ability to shave off the consequences on major injuries, because these people can heal with just laying on hands, right? They've got D&D ass lay on hand. So now that just becomes a thing that you do as like an act of devotion to your god. So that means that like massive, severe bodily injuries are now become part of their rituals.
How do you show Wolverine has a superpower? You get him cut a lot.
Yes. And so physically reaching into somebody's chest cavity violently and without anesthetic is part of like is like a thing that happens during some of their sacraments, and that's so we look at that here, where the adversary is the most obvious example of this, where the adversary and the stubborn, like, they just want to beat the shit out of each other.
They want to fight.
Which was another one of the ones where my chat got enthusiastic, and the that was pretty funny. But that is one of those things where it's like, well, no, this isn't really violence, right? This is toy. violence. This is play violence. And I recently watched a Super Eye Patch Wolf. Do you know Super Eye Patch Wolf?
Yeah, I watch a podcast with him and Woolly Versus.
Yes, yes. So this was his review of Teppu. And Super Eye Patch Wolf is an anime critic who is also does MMA. Is not like a professional MMA fighter. He just does MMA and jiu-jitsu.
Recreational martial arts, yeah.
Recreationally. And he draws this distinction between fighting and violence. That, you know, fighting is for everyone, but violence is something to be avoided in general. And there is something to be said for, you know, the sexualization of violence and the romanticization of violence. But there's like to what extent are things like mutually assured destruction truly violent? From the perspective of the shifting mound and the long quiet, not really. You know, it's about as violent for them as it is, well, somewhat more violent for them, but not by a lot, than it is for us watching it through our computer screen. Of course, for the hero and for the stubborn and the broken and the various vessels, they are kind of dying.
And you can hear it in some of the chapters too. When you get to Moment of Clarity, like the idea behind that, I think, is like you meet the Nightmare Princess, you take off her mask and stare at her real face, and you see like all of the paths all at once. So chapter 3 is all of the voices are in your head and they're all just done. Like you, the player, doesn't know what happened. All of the other voices are like the smitten is like, there's nothing left to love. It's all just nightmares and horror. And you're like, are you okay, buddy? And he's like, no, no. And you're like, oh, this is not good. This is really not good.
Smitty being sad is a bad sign. Smitty being sad is a bad sign. And it's I liked Moment of Clarity a lot. I liked Moment of Clarity.
It's one of the few chapters that gets all the voices. Because the end ones for the Razor do that, and then Moment of Clarity does. And I don't know if there's any other one. Looking at the list I'm seeing here, I think it's just Moment of Clarity, and those two get you all of the voices all at once, and it's one of the few times they all show up. It's really neat to have all of them there. They don't get a lot of screen time.
Yeah, and it is also that was like one of the things like made me like slightly disappointed. Like I adored Smitty so freaking much, and then like realizing that like I was not going to see Smitty except in rare circumstances made me pretty sad. I thought it was going to be cumulative when I first was moving down the route. I thought like each route you were going to get all of the previous ones you've had.
No, when you reset that first time at the long quiet, it's a full reset. You can't find them again until you find them on another route. I was actually looking at my sheet earlier trying to figure out like what is the most common voice you're gonna run into.
I mean the hero.
Well, I mean obviously that, but I mean out of the chapter 2 voices, it might be the stubborn, but not by much, because obviously you have stubborn for the adversary, but you can also have the stubborn in conjunction with the wild, in conjunction with the den, which is an evolved version of the beast. There's another stubborn wild one that you can get access to.
You can get stubborn. You get stubborn with the fury.
Yeah, stubborn with the fury, and then I think that's it.
Yeah, stubborn's fairly common, which is not super surprising because of what the stubborn is and how he interacts with you.
Yeah.
I thought it was I don't know. So let's I didn't dwell on this a little bit as much as I would like to. I should. So let's talk about one of those things that I always thought was an interesting part of this was this concept of the match pair. Yeah. The concept of the match pair. That the voice that you get is always kind of like made for that moment, and you focus on kind of like the causal element of it. That the broken, right? You get the broken the way that you get to the tower, as a route. The basic way you get to it, I can never remember the exact details of it, which is why I got it 3 times. The fact that I didn't really want it.
You try and you meet the cold princess. You try and attack her and fail.
Yes, yes. So, but it is you try to kill her and fail is the core part of it. You try to kill her and fail, and this causes the Broken, who is full of despair and is a doomer. He's the doomer.
Yeah.
And the so that's the fundamental nature of how you get the Broken, and the tower and so on, but also which is also causally makes sense. Like it's causally coherent that the Broken is the one who was broken, but it's also causally coherent that the princess becomes the tower. That when the princess recognizes that
she's that much stronger than you, she manifests as such. Yeah.
Yeah, that she can encounter naked, because the difference between the cold and the kind princess is generally that the cold princess sees your blade first. So you are encountering her, she encounters you in a circumstance of more naked, obvious power.
So actually, I would disagree with that. I don't think it's she sees the blade. You can tell the difference at the top of the stairs before she ever sees you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's you. It's you.
Perception.
She is very much like a quantum existence. The way you see her will change her. If you pick up the blade, it's because you see her as something that's threatening, so she appears threatening. If you leave the blade, she appears non-threatening because you don't perceive her as a threat.
I will be honest. I took it as not just purely one way. I took it as she has that level of she includes the cabin. The cabin is part of what she can see about the world. And so as soon as you pick up the blade, she knows.
Sort of, because the Princess and the Dragon the Princess and the Dragon is an interesting to transition a little bit on this topic. The Princess and the Dragon is a chapter where you get to it by killing her in chapter 1, and then going back down to take the knife and killing yourself to escape the good ending. And you go back, and she's a ghost. You allow her to possess you, and the moment you do, you're like, oh hey, she's got a body now. Time to slay the princess, and you stab yourself, and her ghostly spirit leaves your body and your perspective goes with her, and when you die, the world resets and you're in her body and you see from her perspective. And she hears you enter the cabin because you literally hear the door open. You hear the blade dragging across the table as the opportunist picks it up, because he's in that chapter. You hear the door open, but she doesn't really, and it's actually interesting because you can like look down at yourself and you're like kind of like flashing between this like ghostly see-through body and a more concrete one. But once the opportunist stabs you and you go back into your body, she's solid again.
Well, and I will also make a note about the Princess and the Dragon that I think is an interesting thing. The princess that you are with when you're in the Princess and the Dragon chapter is the sweet princess. Right? You can hear it in the voice.
But it's definitely not the cold princess. It's, I'm wondering like, how is she the sweet one? Kind of.
I would say that's the closest voice.
Yeah, that's probably the closest voice. I think she's a little bit different and distinct, but it also is an interesting chapter too, where she becomes inhuman and then returns to a more human form, which does not happen often. Usually she just mutates worse and worse. Cause she, like, the Spectre is a great way to get into the Wraith, where like she's a ghost and then she's a meaner ghost. Where you have the Beast into the Den, where she's an animal and then a bigger animal. The Adversary into the Eye of the Needle, which is just again more of the same. Well, this is one where she goes down a bad route and then bounces back because you're with her in a way, I guess.
Well, to finish the thought, you go from the Beast. You go that route, right? You get the you get to the dragon, the Princess and the Dragon. You have the sweeter type of princess. She's not a cold, calculating, threatening, menacing princess.
Yeah.
The dragon grabs the knife.
Yeah.
Like, they do come down with the knife. So that's the only way that's kind of the exception to the rule that if you grab the knife, she becomes cold.
Well, I would disagree, because the person that's making the decisions that's affecting her is already in her body. We didn't grab the knife. The opportunist did. We're the one that's able to influence her, because we're the one that's perception. The rest of them are not quite like the narrator. They're not echoes, but their involvement with her doesn't let them drive, which is why the moment we get stabbed, we jump back into the body and we're in full control again. And when we're there with her, which is also interesting, like when she takes possession of you, she stops being the kind of like spooky, slightly sinister specter princess, and she sounds normal. Yeah, you're right. She sounds like the damsel or the sweet princess, and she's kind of like curious. She's kind of she's polite. I love in The Princess and the Dragon where she's just like, yeah, you had 3 voices in your head. I liked one of them. The other 2 were kind of mean. Because she absolutely pegs the narrator. It's like, yeah, this guy's a dick. And the cold's kind of scary too, but like, I like the hero.
Yeah, everybody likes the hero. He's the hero.
Yeah.
How can you not like the hero?
But no, I think because you're with her and you're the kind of quantum existence that's deciding things, the knife being picked up doesn't change it. Also, that is another fun chapter where if you give her the knife to cut herself out, she'll cut her wrist and throw the knife out the window, and the narrator has to narrate the fact that she throws the knife away and it's gone forever, and he like stops mid-word. It's like, damn it, no! It's a great chapter if you hate the narrator.
It is. But yeah, it's again, I am a sucker for love stories, and I actually found this in large part a very compelling love story. It's a love story that has elements that I found uncomfortable and disagreeable, but it's ultimately a love story that I found really compelling, because it is a love story about for one thing, these incredibly grand concepts, but also I found it kind of, one of the things that we haven't really mentioned very much here is that the dialogue options, you have control over them, but the dialogue options that you as the dragon, or whatever you want to call yourself, the long quiet, the dialogue options that you have, particularly in the end game, during the end game sequence, they always biased, at least I felt like they really biased towards not liking being a god.
Yeah, you can't really like lean into that too much, or doing so is considered like a bad ending, because you can lose that boss fight and she's just like, yep, no, we're taking over. But also you can do the opposite. If you go super violent with her, when you get to the end, you can fight her on the outside and never go into her body and actually like take control of her and stop her that way too. You have to do only violent choices to get there. So that's like the Eye of the Needle, that's the Razor. But it's basically knife every time, fight every time, kill her every time. If you do that, you will get a choice to actually fight her at the end of the game. Which I don't think you can go down based on everything else you've said, but it is there as its own special ending.
Yes, it is. I did not do that one. I did not do that one ever.
I think I got close to triggering the conditions for it, but I don't think I actually succeeded.
Well, actually, hold on. Maybe I did. I did do one ending where I think I just killed her and became...
You wake up as a god. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a weird ending.
Well, actually, that one's interesting because it actually has 2 different options for it. Because, yeah, that's basically the one I did where you go inside of her, you pick up the knife, and instead of choosing to allow her to reset everything, you kill her.
I did not do that.
And then you wake up. As the Long Quiet, you break the construct and get out. And the voices are back again. They're all in your head, and they're talking with you. And depending on how you interact with them before you get to the mirror, because every time you finish a chapter 2 and go back to the Long Quiet, the voices see the mirror and they're like, "Oh, I don't like that mirror. I'm scared. I think it's gonna hurt me." And you can be nice to them, or you can be mean. If you're nice to them, when you get to the ending where you become a god and she's dead, the voices are nice to you. But if you're a dick to them, they're mean to you, and that is a specific, different ending that has an achievement connected to it on Steam.
Interesting. I did not even consider that one. I did not even consider
I'm
that
I'm
one.
too nice to them, and I never saw it, but like it's there, which is one of those crazy things. Like, to get into mechanics about this a little bit, I remember seeing on Twitter that the developers are like, the achievement to finish the gallery is the single most evil thing they've ever done, is what they claim.
Yeah.
And you laugh at it at first, and you're like, wait, how many times am I gonna have to replay this to get all of these? Like, you can save scumming helps to an extent, but not much, because like the razor is a good example. Like, you have essentially two options for the razor for where it ends, based off of whether or not you take the knife in chapter 2. But like, there's a bunch of micro choices along the way, and other things you can pick and choose. But even then, you finish the razor and you get one of those endings, and then you have to finish that run to get the image during the final boss fight. It's a requirement, because it does matter. There is a different image in the final boss fight and on the shifting mound for what she does, like when she holds up the princess and puppets it to talk to you. Like, it's either the heart or it's the metal construct. So if you don't play through the whole thing, you won't get them all. So you can't just save scum it. You actually have to play it several times. Which is interesting, I thought.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, I mean, we addressed it a little bit earlier, and I kind of wanted to talk mechanics of just like, it's interesting seeing the scenarios, and once you get past your first clear of the game, and you understand, like, okay, every time I walk into this room, I'm gonna have the choice to kill her, to die in the process, or to help her get out. As broad answers, you will always have those three choices in some capacity or another to get out of that situation. But sometimes you have other ones. Sometimes it's a mutual destruction. Sometimes she eats you. Sometimes she tries to merge with you, which I think is both like the Beast and the Den try to do that. I know that the Fury does it one time. I think that's like the whole concept of the Wild is like the two of you merge with nature as some kind of like nature deity almost.
So my read of the Wild was that the Wild is a result of the primary objective of the construct failing. The primary objective of the construct, the primary function, I should say, is to make it so that the Long Quiet and the Shifting Mound are discrete entities. And
that would make sense.
My recollection of the Wild is that the two of you are actually on the same side against the
narrator.
Against the narrator, and this is why there's no coherent geography in the Wild. I did not read the Wild so much about nature, but so much about the total dissolution of space.
That would make sense, because it talks about like her spreading out like roots, almost like how it talks, which is why I kind of made the nature reference. Yeah. But you're right about the construct failing, because the one way to get to the Wild is the princess eats you and you die in her stomach, being dissolved, and that triggers the Wild. Whereas I got it because I fought the witch, and basically I was looking at the chart, and it's literally, you see the witch and you just fight her immediately. You don't talk to her, you don't do anything. It's just an immediate fight, and essentially the cabin turns on the two of you and traps you in there underground as vines like start growing around and into your bodies, like in real time.
Yes.
So it's almost like a merging with nature, but the two of you are still distinct and different entities. There isn't a chapter where that ever stops happening that I've run into, because that also would be a game over, because then death is its own god again that controls both stasis and change, and well, that construct ain't gonna last too long.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I said, that's definitely my read of the Wild, is that it's and so there's obviously like a reason to read it as a nature thing, which is that like the ways you get there are from the witch and the beast, who are the most like nature oriented, the most naturalistic. There's definitely like thematic genre. I would say genre zones to the various princesses, right?
Yeah, those are the two nature ones. The Razor and the Adversary are both like the conflict ones.
Yeah, they're very much like the straightforward violence ones, but there's also like you kind of group the Adversary and the Tower into like giantess.
So I would have combined the Tower and the Damsel as like the relationship ones, which leads the Nightmare and the Spectre as like your purest horror ones.
Your traditional horror ones. Well, I was also going to say the Tower and I'm thinking about this visually, right? Thinking about the visuals of the cabin. The visuals of the cabin for the for the beast and the witch are very nature oriented, right?
Yes.
It's lots of like overgrown roots, and the damsel and the tower are the two that become less rustic. You start with a fairly rustic cabin, and most of the options become either more rustic or more dilapidated. But in the case of the tower and the princess, the cabin becomes more grand, more beautiful.
It's more like a traditional castle almost.
Yeah, it becomes castle-like. It gains stonework, and a sense of solidity and construction that it lacks otherwise. And so yeah, like there is that thing. There's that like the beast and the witch are more nature-oriented, but like I said, nature is not itself a deep theme of the story. It's a kind of surface level aesthetic that it engages with, which is a kind of interesting contrast. Actually, no, wait, maybe I'm wrong here, because they do talk about nature as in like things nature, the nature of the long quiet, the nature of the shifting mount. But it doesn't really, I guess, they don't talk a lot about like the natural world as a thing that like exists out in the way that we usually use it in literary.
Yeah, they don't really care that much about it. But I'm actually like looking at our pairings here. I'm like, okay, so we did those 8 pairings. How many princesses are there, and what are the last pairings? So like we have the Spectre and the Nightmare. We've got the Tower and
I was only letting myself with
the Damsel.
With chapter 2s because like I don't. When we include chapter 2s, it gets really confusing.
Yeah. But the Razor and the Adversary, the Beast and the Witch. Which does that mean that we're pairing the Skeptic and the Prisoner with the Stranger and the Contrarian?
I think so. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess they're the most doubtful ones. They're the most questioning ones.
Well, and it's there's like a visual. I'm thinking about this visually, right? That
yeah, visually, I would say the Nightmare pairs better with the Stranger.
Yeah, I think so too. Actually, I think so too. But the Spectre and the Prisoner also do as well, because those are like the most prison-like, right? The most punitive. The Spectre is the result of just flat out executing a person in cold blood. The prison feels no more like a prison than it does with those two.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's otherwise a cabin, and there's like an extent to which you can almost kind of trick yourself into thinking that this cabin is a cabin, but the cabin is a prison.
Yeah, it is.
Which is again, I have strong feelings and a complicated relationship. Not actually that complicated, but an atypical relationship with prisons. And so that was again another strike against the narrator very quickly. Was like, by the time I got to the cabin the first time, I'm like, this is a fucking prison, and I break down prisons.
That's fair, and again, that's kind of the fun contrast between us, where you were anti-narrator and I was pro-princess, and there is a very different play style based off of that.
Yep. That's true.
But yeah, it's a very interesting like mechanical interaction, like how you get to this game and how you find some stuff, which is why like certain routes are very hard for me to find. It took me my 4th run until I ever met the Beast, because I couldn't figure out how to do it, because it's I think it's you try and fight the princess with the knife and then you back off, which I think can also get the tower, which is interesting to me, that like the way you start trying to fight her and then stop. Like if you go through all of it and the narrator forces you to attack her, and then you warn her the first time, and then the narrator forces you to attack her again. That's the difference between the tower and the witch.
Yeah,
like those are the two strong polar opposites of that. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of interesting how the difference between those two choices is, did you take the knife or didn't you? Did you see her as threatening and were beaten, and then thus feel like emasculated and powerless? Or did you leave the knife up there and she just got one over on you, and now you need to be smarter to deal with her and trixier, which is why you have the opportunist in your head?
Yes. I am running low on energy.
Fair.
I'm running low on energy. This is one of those weeks where I started out the week saying I was going to take it easy, and then I looked at it and was like, oh, I've got 4 streams.
Fair.
So I think, and we've got ads in like 10 minutes, so that's actually a pretty good time for.
Yeah, let's look for like a
wrap.
Yeah, like wrap it up and let's look for a raid target.
Well, let's folks, because of the way Stream Together works, I'm sure that you guys can find Deuscain if you found his thoughts and feelings interesting, and I'm sure folks can find me.
Yes, I do recommend Almantas to my community.
Thank you. I mostly stream a lot of hand cam arts. I do some gaming and some lectures, but a lot of hand cam art, and I try to keep it cozy and simple over here. I try to keep it pretty straight, pretty easy going over here. Yes.
I do a lot more like RPGs on my side and story games. So I've done visual novels. Obviously, I've done several of them. At one point next year, I might even like play like the old like Fate Stay Night visual novel, because they re-released a remaster on Steam, and I'm like, oh hey, this is neat.
I have been wanting to go into dating sims as a genre. That's a genre I have not really engaged with very heavily on stream, but I think they're cool.
There's some good ones.
Yeah, I've wanted to do Katawa Shoujo. I've got Valhalla loaded up, which is not a dating sim.
Valhalla's great. So is Coffee Talk and Tavern Talk. Those are both real good ones. Yeah.
It has been an interesting journey for me. So where I have a raid target in mind.
Well, since you were kind enough to sit down and chat with me, let's go with your raid target tonight.
Let's go with Tiger Fae. Let's go with Tiger Fae. If I put in a raid into the one, I've never done this before. If I put a raid into the chat, will drag you with me?
I don't think so. Tiger FAE.
Yes, Tiger FAE. They are a friend of Vex.
Ah, nice.
Thank you all for being here. I am mostly active on my Discord and on Blue Sky, and I post my schedules on Blue Sky usually on Sundays. I will shut down this. I'll stop doing the self-promotion at that point. But thank you all for being here. I had a lovely time.
I did as well. For me, if somebody wants to find me out there, I'm going to actually share my socials link here because I got a thing. But I am active on Blue Sky and Twitter. I do have a Discord that I'm slowly trying to grow, but I post. That's probably like the best central hub for me because you'll find all of the like links to like YouTube videos and art I get done and things like that on there. But also, yeah, I'll post my schedule there on socials, things like that. So, yeah. So, yeah, had a lovely time. Thank you for having me.
Had a lovely time with you too. Oh, hi, Kari. Good to see you. Good to see you, Stripperina. And also, hello, Lunala Rose. Gotta give a shout out to Kari, who is suffering with Sonic all day.
Oof.
All right. Yeah, brutal. All right. Everyone have a lovely night.
Yeah, let's get that raid started. See if it runs. Yes. It looks like it's working for me.
Alright, raid, Tiger Fae. Alrighty. And I will go off to my ending now screen and we will raid out. Thank you all for being here.
Have a good night, everybody.